Welcome to the Licensing Subcommittee A. I'm now going to read out the protocol for the meeting. Only speak when the chair invites you to. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communication via the chair. Will everyone please ensure that their mics are muted when they are not speaking, apart from the chair, who does not need to mute their mic at any stage, to ensure the meeting is conducted effectively. When speaking, be succinct and do not exceed the allocated timeframes highlighted at the start of the hearing and contained within the agenda pack. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in the report, refer to the page number. If you are having technical difficulties, please use the chat function in the Google Meet to alert the meeting, or dial in on the phone number and use the PIN provided within the meeting invite or on the council's website. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent destructive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. If there is more than one application, parties are advised that after each application is heard in turn as set out in the agenda pack, the subcommittee will not retire after each application. The parties can contact the licensing service to be informed of the decision following the day, or simply wait until they are notified of the decision. Applicants and all other parties will be asked to leave the proceedings hangouts after their item is concluded. All applications have been considered. Once all applications have been considered, any remaining parties will be asked to log out of the hearing. Please do so promptly so that the councillors will have opportunity to deliberate and make a decision on each application they have heard. Each party will be notified of the decision within 5 working days. Okay, could I now seek a nomination for a chair, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Welcome everyone to this Licensing Subcommittee A, Thursday the 8th of October 2020. The first, just to check you've all got sight of an agenda. Yep, everyone got sight of an agenda. In the inside sleeve, there's an agenda order of business on there, as you'll see. The first part is an election of chair, which we've done. Any apologies for absence at all?
No apologies, Chair.
Any declarations of interest? None from me.
None from me, Chair.
Do we have minutes of the previous meeting at all? Is that relevant? I don't think it is in this case.
There's no minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll just take you through the sort of hearing procedure. So step one, there's 5 minutes essentially for most of these. So step one is the appointment of chair. That's been done. Step two, the licensing officer will outline the report. Step three, the applicant will present their case. These are 5 minutes. Step four, responsible authorities will come in and speak for 5 minutes as well. Any other persons? Step five, discussion at step six, which is sort of a loose laissez-faire type situation where we can have a proper discussion. Closing remarks, final clarifications, and then we will ask you to leave and go and consider our decision. So I would like to invite, please, the licensing officer, Suba, to outline the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing Service received an application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act for 47 Wilton Way for the hours stated in the agenda. The licensing and other persons' objection remains. We have received the supporting documents from the applicant and the other persons which have been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. If we could just move on to the applicant, please. And I note, I don't know if Claire, you're going to be doing it, or is it your lawyer? In fact, let's just pause there. What I'd like to do is just for everyone relevant to this particular application to just introduce themselves. So I'm Councillor Smith. I'm a councillor in Stoke Newington Ward. Sorry, I forgot about that. So if we just go around and introduce ourselves quickly, please.
Chair, my name's Richard Bunch. I'm the consultant from Complete Licensing for the Crime and Disorder.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Chair, good evening. I'm Marcus Lavelle. I'm the representative for Claire Patak and her business at 47 Wilton Way. You'll be hearing a bit from me and hopefully more from her and Richard. I don't want to bore anybody.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Hi.
Anyone else? Hi.
I'm Claire Patak. It's my business. Violet's my bakery, and this is Imogen works with me. So I'm here to answer any questions. And
Okay, cool. Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Patrick?
Councillor Patrick. I'm Patrick. I represent Kings Park Ward.
Brilliant.
I'm
David?
Amanda North. I'm from Legal Services, assisting members.
Thank you.
I'm David Tuitt, licensing officer on behalf of the licensing authority.
Excellent. Brilliant. I think that's pretty much everyone, is it? For this one? Yeah. Cool. Okay. Let's crack on with it. So, applicant, whoever's going to be speaking for the applicant, please.
Okay, Chair. Given the nature of this application, and as an experienced licensing authority, I anticipate the members are aware that this isn't some application for an early hours bar. This is not a cumulative impact policy application. This is a relatively straightforward application to take an existing business, that being a bakery with an ancillary cafe, and allow them to sell alcohol, glasses of wine, bottles of beer, with their baked goods. Those sales being made to people who wish to take the baked goods home with them, and those also to people who wish to either sit in the premises or in the tables and chairs that they have located outside of the premises on the public highway. Given that it is simple, I would simply like to try and take us through the relevant elements of the licensing policy first, and hopefully then shut up and just let Claire Patak tell you about her bakery. So if I can just address, first things first, if I can take you to, and I don't know if we're seeing this live on screen at the same time, but if one of your officers is able to bring up the statement of licensing policy, I don't know if that, or if I'm even looking at the right screen for that.
I don't think that's possible.
Oh, that's fine. May I just ask if the members have copies of the policy available to them, because I will simply quote from the paragraphs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic. In very simple terms, if we look at paragraph 1.27,
Yeah, which document are you referring to here?
oh, sorry, the statement of licensing policy document. Hopefully you have a published version in front of you.
No. I'm not
Yep.
sure we've got that. Have we got that?
I'm not
Page
sure.
five.
I'm not
Page
sure that
five.
you,
No.
I'm not sure that you have the
No.
actual document. I can try and send that to you if you need to have that now. I can send that to you by email.
If it makes it easier for the members, I'm happy to simply quote the paragraphs.
Yeah.
With my relevant submissions. You can then look at the electronic document when it's sent to you by your officer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we've just got an extract. So we just have a relevant extract from the licensing policy rather than the whole document in front of us.
Okay. Well, I'll begin with, just for the note, paragraph 1.27, which simply indicates that where an authorization for the sale or supply of alcohol is in place, there is a requirement for a mandatory condition in relation to age verification. And everyone here is probably aware of that. It forms one of the mandatory conditions. It appears on everybody's license. It notes that the council supports the promotion of Challenge 25 schemes, but also recommends additional measures: regular documented staff training, relevant notices, and the use of a register to record refusals of alcohol sales. So if I can ask the members to look at page 35 of the supplementary bundle, as I believe it will be, the additional papers, it might be listed as that.
Yeah, is that you were looking at prevention of crime and disorder? Is that it?
If bear with me, I will also go to page 35. I'm using an electronic copy as well, I'm afraid. Yes, policy supporting the licensing objectives.
Yeah. So proposed conditions, yeah, proposed conditions, basically that document.
No. I'm sorry, Chair. Apologies if I've misled you. The document I'm looking for is titled Violet Cakes Hearing Bundle for Email.
Okay. Okay, well, just carry on.
Okay, it's simply that when you look at that, members, you will see this forms part of the report generated by the applicant's crime and disorder consultant, Mr. Richard Bunch. These are policies that the premises have adopted. Have adopted on Mr. Bunch's recommendation, and they cover those issues that are recommended by Hackney's own licensing policy. You'll see that there is a Challenge 25 provision, which is also covered by way of condition. The policies throughout require notices to be displayed, and I would point out that if you adopt a Challenge 25 policy, it tends to come with a large number of notices and labels to be detailed on your website and in your premises. There is also a staff training requirement within these policies, and there's actually a condition, as agreed with the police, that insists, under criminal penalty, that all refusals of alcohol are logged in a written document that is kept on site for inquiry by the police or other council officers. So my point there is very much that in one of the key elements of Hackney's own licensing policy, this application is not just compliant, but it embraces that policy. My next point, and just to give you effectively the heads up on this, I only have 3 overall points on policy, so you don't have too much to go through with me. Paragraph 2.12 of the licensing policy, bear with me. When dealing with licenses, Hackney will adopt, in general principles, a desire to see more diverse activities going on within the borough, which makes sense. The closest we get to this, however, 2.12 notes that the real intention is to increase diversity of offering in the later hours, in the evening and night time, where the council have identified there's a lack of opportunity there. Really, it's late bars and nightclubs, although of course under the current COVID regime, they're all closed at 10 p.m. But that's very much what we see in the borough. Now, that doesn't necessarily apply here, but even so, Claire and her team have embraced this because this is not an alcohol-led application. The application is for the sale of alcohol, but what we have here is a business which is primarily a bakery, a world-famous one. After that, it's got a cafe on the premises which sells those fine baked goods and cakes. And then in comes this application to just add a retail of alcohol with the sale of baked goods by way of an increase in turnover for an already established business. This is far from being an alcohol-led application, and it's certainly not an alcohol-led business. My final point on policy is very much the core hours policy. I'm sure the members will be very familiar with core hours.
Yeah.
Most applicants talk about them. And I would simply say, if we head to paragraph 2.18 and onwards, you'll find the core hours policy.
Yeah.
And it indicates that applications within core hours are generally looked at as being acceptable because they're not in those later hours where problems can arise. Now, just as a comparison, core hours Monday to Thursday are 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday, they're midnight. Mm-hmm. Our application is 2 hours shy of that. We're 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. respectively. And even those hours, as you will have seen, as I'm sure the members have had time, hopefully, to read the documentation that we have submitted, the members will see that Claire herself has explained the operation doesn't tend to go that late. It tends to close up around about 5:30, 6 o'clock. However, they would like to try and introduce an after-work trade and access a slightly new market. It also gives them some flexibility if they want to have baking-based events at the premises. So not only are the hours we've applied for well within core hours or framework hours, the operation of the premises is unlikely to actually maximize those hours on a regular basis.
Can I just stop you there just 1 second?
Yes, certainly.
I thought the hours were 8:30 Monday to Thursday, 9:30 Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and 8:30 on Sunday.
Oh, are you referring to the licensed hours that have been applied for?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
You're referring to the closing, yeah. Okay.
Yes, I was referring to closing hours just to indicate that we're intending to be wrapped up long before then, let alone licensed hours.
Okay, thank you.
But you are correct, sir. And by comparison, I believe it's a relevant comparison. I hope the members will come with me on the Spurstow Arms that's referred to in a number of the representations. That's on the corner of the Wilton Way estate. Has hours, and I'm simply quoting this from your own licensing register, sir, midnight 30, Monday to Saturday, and 11 p.m. on Sundays. Very reasonable hours for a pub, certainly one in the centre of the city. Can I just check we haven't lost the learned member?
Don't know what's
Sorry,
there.
are you talking about Councillor Patrick?
Yes, is Councillor Patrick?
No, she's still visible. She can still see us. It's just that she's on non-visual.
There she is.
There she is.
Back.
Okay.
She is still listening.
I was worried she was tired of listening to me.
No.
Yeah, I think you kind of almost used your 5 minutes.
Okay, and so yes, if I can
I've
just
now emailed the licensing policy to both members.
Yeah, thank you. I've got it on my phone.
Great, thank you.
So if I could just bring my submissions to an end. If we compare the availability of alcohol from a nearby licensed premises like the Spurstow Arms, people can quite reasonably obtain alcohol without food. They can stand up while they drink it. They can stand outside while they drink it. And we've seen that has caused some issues for our neighbours. And we've witnessed that. But that isn't capable of happening here. We have shorter hours, shorter opening hours. Alcohol must be served to persons seated at lawfully placed tables if they're outside, otherwise they'll be inside. Although I'm sure your licensing officer will have a few comments on that, and we'd be more than happy to enter into a discussion with the members and with the licensing officer. But that draws me to an end. So I'd very much appreciate if I could hand over to the applicant herself just to talk a bit about her business briefly.
Well, we can give her a couple of minutes. Yes, please. Just whilst we're here, what we've got in front of us is not what we received in further documents that came through in regards to the first floor of the building. So I'm not sure if we can consider the first floor aspect in this application.
Sir, I would submit that as all of these documents have been submitted prior to the hearing, and in any event, the working day before the hearing, they are indeed things that can be considered. And if the members have a concern about the administration of that, things can be dealt with by way of condition that would require, for example, the works sign-off of any activity. Although if the members are aware of our position is that the control of off-sales are better dealt with through an off-sales condition rather than through designating licensed areas outside. But as I say, happy to discuss that with your officers, sir.
Okay. Amanda, please.
All I was going to clarify is that I think that the chair is actually referring to consultation of all the papers from the outset when the agenda was published. So I think that's what we're referring to, that members of the public have had an opportunity to see the full application with all the plans, etc., from the outset. So that's what the concern is, not so much that the conditioning. I think that they're aware that they can do that.
Yeah, that's right. I just wanted to flag that up because I think
that's not a problem, sir. We can discuss that at the time if that helps.
Councillor Patrick, any areas of clarification right now? Your microphone.
Sorry, I do apologise for my picture going off, but I'm obviously, like everybody else, doing this from home, and I'm sitting in my kitchen, and other members of my family sometimes need to access areas, and rather than have them on the screen, I turn my camera off. So if I turn my camera off, it doesn't mean I'm not here. It just means that I'm trying to protect the privacy of other members of my family. Amanda, sorry, could you spell out, from what Councillor Smith has just highlighted, what area exactly that we can't consider today? I think it's the first floor.
Yes, that's correct. I don't know whether or not Mr. Lavelle is aware of what documents were consulted on. I think that may be there. I'm not sure if he's clear on that. So I think we need to be clear that it's everything that's been consulted on is what members will be considering today. Otherwise, the areas that haven't been consulted on do need to go through that consultation process separately to today's application.
Marcus, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, indeed. No, that's very much understood. The reason the additional plan has been provided by way of consultation, by way of discussion document, your licensing officers indicate that he didn't want to see off sales on the premises license, and rather he would see the outside areas licensed themselves. So I have attempted to get some plans quickly drawn up and sent over to him as of yesterday, indicating where the outside area would be licensed. But as I say, Chair, it's very much our position that correctly conditioned off-sales conditions would be more appropriate. They would add flexibility for a business, whilst at the same time protecting the licensing objectives and the interests of local residents.
Okay, great. Okay, so Claire, would you like to come in for a couple of minutes?
Thank you. Hi. I really just wanted to say a couple of things that I feel are important for the application. I think for me, primarily, I want to continue to be a business owner that is a very considerate business owner. I really feel like I've been in this premises for 10 years. I've had my business for 15, and I've employed so many local people and created something that I feel like makes a lot of locals really happy. It's a pleasure to run this business, and so many people we're so excited that we managed to get through COVID and reopen. So one of the things that's difficult though is just being able to continue to run the business really financially. So having the ability to sell a glass of wine or champagne or something with our cakes would really help that. It's not at all, I definitely don't want to run a bar. That's not what I'm interested in doing. I'm interested in continuing to be a pastry chef and making cakes and wedding cakes. And we also do like wedding tastings. I know for couples, and it'd be nice to be able to serve them a glass of champagne or something like that when we do that. So that's kind of the reason why we want to have the license. But also, yeah, I mean, we've become really popular, obviously, because of the royal wedding, and we've done a lot of, we did like street party for the royal wedding. A lot of the residents, a lot of the residents from the estate came to that. And I felt like we were really good neighbors. So I hope that we can work this out. That'd be great.
Okay, well, we can kind of go into a bit more of that during the discussion phase. But thank you for that. That's great. So can we now move on, please, to the responsible authorities? I believe that's David Chewett.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it very brief because I can see we've got a lot to get through this evening. But essentially, my representation is within the agenda pack, and I do note the modest hours that have been sought. However, I think what you can see from my representation is that there's just a bit of concern about how much of the area outside of the site will be used as part of this application, so beyond the perimeter of the plan that accompanied the application. So you can see from the representation that the photos enclosed within the original application supporting document shows that some activities have extended beyond the pavement, and I'm aware that residents have concerns about this and that expect that they will mention this when they make their submissions. Hence, I suggested that the off-sales element be removed from the application. Then with any external area form part of the premises itself, which therefore means that if an officer, say for example a licensing officer, is inspecting the premises, they can refer to the plan that is attached to the license if you're minded to grant to the license, and that would show where the boundary of that external area is. However, on receipt of the additional bundle received yesterday, I saw the references to the first floor, which wasn't in the original application. So this then further create a bit more concern, if you like, about how much of the premises is to be used and what are the areas to be used.
Yeah.
also noted that the suggestion that the external area could hold up to 30 persons, which is quite a lot of people in an area measuring 3 meters by 3.6 meters, about 10 square meters. So that implies a density of nearly 3 people per square meter, which is quite a lot. So yeah, I think we'll get to it in the discussion phase. So I'll just leave it there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think we will have to discuss all these different outside areas and also the first floor when we come to the discussion. Right. So it's other persons now. So I don't know who is there to speak. I've got Leona Clark, Zoe O'Connor on here.
Yes.
Debbie Mitchener.
Yeah. Zoe O'Connor. Good evening.
Zoe, would you like to take your 5 minutes? I don't know if you want to spread them out between you. Are you the only one representing the residents today, or is there other people there?
No, we have Sheila, Debbie, and Leona.
Okay.
So they can speak before me if they choose to.
Yeah. Well, you can all have a couple of minutes each. Say. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Is that
fine.
cool? Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Well, I have a lot of major concerns in regard to the application. There has been a lot of criminal activity that has not been mentioned, a lot of littering, the fact that the noise that comes from the premises causes us, we become restless due to it all. It's making our lives a misery. And the owner doesn't understand because she doesn't live here. So she has no idea on the impact, naturally. But all we're asking for is to be allowed to live in our home and have some quality of life. There's the littering. There's the begging where people are approaching the tables while her customers are in front of her premises. There's the fact that she's taken over a complete area that, one, is supposed to be conservation. Two, people have been told they cannot access those benches, apparently. Been made to feel uncomfortable, which I've felt myself, for not purchasing from her. There's so many things that are happening. You've got children running up and down, outside there, so close to the road. The parents are preoccupied with their meals and their coffees. The amount of times that she's had her lock-ins, and we've got vans coming here early hours of the morning to avoid, I suppose, congestion charges. All of these things are having a major impact on our lives. There's no sound insulation there. There's no sound insulation here where we live. So, and it's literally 10 steps across the road, having to close our windows in the summer months due to the noise that exudes from there. People really don't understand how bad it is. We have 8 drinking places within a quarter of a mile of each other, spilling out of the spur stove. And I hear that Violet wants to keep her hours reasonable, but we know that after 6 months, you can reapply and extend hours. You can always get increase in hours. We've just had enough of the fact that our lives are constantly disturbed. And that is what I'd like to add for now.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else want to come in for your 2 minutes?
Hi, Councillor Smith, it's Debbie Mitchener here.
Hello, Debbie.
Hello. I just wanted to add a few bits to what Zoe was saying, which is in terms of I'm personally not happy about the request for a takeaway service, because at the moment, especially with COVID restrictions upon the Spurstow, when people leave at 10 o'clock, they tend to come into the estate and utilise the estate. as somewhere to carry on drinking. They gather in larger groups than is allowed at the moment. They ignore the rule of 6 because they've obviously had a few bevies. I'm not saying necessarily that is what's going to happen with Claire's, but it is a concern. And I do think that if alcohol is sold to be taken away and bottles are allowed to be taken home if they're half consumed, that we are the ones that are going to run the risk of feeling that, especially in the summer months. We've got a nice garden inside this estate, and we end up with a lot of litter in here from Friday nights and Saturday nights. The other thing is, since Violet's has opened, as Zoe mentioned, there's been a lot of furniture in places that it shouldn't be. The last few days when I've been coming home from work in the afternoon, the queues to go in and place orders at Violet's can take up the whole pavement, so you can't walk down that side of the pavement. There's no clear queuing system, and if that's going to go on later into the night, and I am very mindful that at the moment, we are under COVID restrictions. It means people are having to walk into the street to go round an area, and also supporting Zoe with the noise, etc. I mean, that block that directly faces Violet's has a majority of older people with health conditions, so it needs to, people need to be mindful of that. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for that. Is it Sheila? Sheila there? Is there a Sheila? Leona? No? Leona Clark?
No, I've got nothing more to add. I think Debbie and Zoe summed it up quite exactly how it is. Thank you.
Okay. Any?
Sorry, may I just add another very important point?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've witnessed myself people who sit out there with laptops and phones. I have seen robberies occur outside there while people are sitting out the front with lovely laptops and phones. They've been targeted. I've seen twice a young lady, and the other one was a gentleman, who were attacked by people on a bike where they jumped off and snatched their property. People are sitting out there recklessly and are not realizing that they are bringing unwanted attentions to the area. We already have enough with drug problems without added problems. That's all I'd like to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, we'll now move on to the kind of discussion phase, which is just a general, maybe if I could ask Claire to come back maybe on some of those points that have been made by the residents of the Wilton estate. Claire, would you mind?
Chair, could we ask Claire or somebody at some stage? I'm still not clear as to the first floor, and that's what I was trying to find out earlier from Amanda, whether we are discussing this first floor area that seems to have crept into the application or not. And also, can people be clear about what outside areas we're talking about as well, please? And also whether there's a pavement licence and where for tables and chairs and where it's for. Sorry.
Okay.
If we could, I think we're about to see potentially the papers. Bear with me. Or maybe we're not. Okay. If I could assist Councillor Patrick, but I think it would assist everybody. The application as made is for the ground floor, which is where the retail area is within this premises. That can be seen. Bear with me whilst I try to find a reference for you, Councillor.
Yeah, I've looked at the map. The plan, rather.
Yeah.
Okay, so you will see there's a ground floor.
Yeah.
And the intention is for, bear with me, I'm also looking at it. The intention is for the application to cover on sales for anyone who wishes to consume specifically on the ground floor.
Yeah.
And for it to have an off sales permission that will permit 2 forms of off sales. The first form is a what I would describe as a standard off sales permission that allows people to take alcohol with a purchase of food away from the premises, and that's simply for those who wish to buy items and take them home, for example. The other element of any off sale is that you can simply take the off sale can allow you to sit anywhere, but we have conditioned that so that if somebody does wish to purchase alcohol and then sit outside of the premises, they would only be allowed to be served with alcohol. And this is important. Nobody takes alcohol from the building, save for the staff. Staff serve the alcohol to persons. Those persons must be 1, making a purchase of food, and 2, seated at lawfully placed tables and chairs. And that's where the control comes in. And as Mr. Cheward has pointed out, that does mean people could, in the winter months, because there's no point using the upper floor in the summer months, in the winter months, around about 20 people could sit at the top floor. That could be conditioned and limited at 20. And in the summer months, people choose to sit at and again, the phrase in the condition is lawfully placed tables and chairs. It's a criminal offence to provide, under the licence we are proposing, it would be a criminal offence to provide alcohol to people who are not sat at lawfully placed tables and chairs. And within the Violet Cakes hearing bundle for email document, you will see the tables and chairs licence that the premises currently holds. And I believe it also has a photograph showing you what that area looks like. I am told the area would seat, without COVID restrictions, approximately 20 people. But under COVID restrictions, it seats about 12 to 15, depending on which way people are facing and whether they're wearing masks and so on for those additional measures that people require. So what you have is I would describe it as a relatively small outside area of up to 20 people. It is lawfully licensed by the council.
Right.
Sorry, Councillor, do you need me to repeat that?
No. So I'm trying to find the document on
Can
my
I just
iPad.
ask for one point of clarification on the issue of off sales? Essentially, it mentions, I think, in some of the conditions, the proposed conditions, that the sale of alcohol for takeaway can go on to 11. But I'm obviously aware that you want to shut it at 9 on a Monday to Thursday, sort of 10 Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So where does the 11 o'clock come in?
I don't know where that 11 o'clock comes in from.
Yeah,
Chair.
it's I've been trying to find it in the conditions. I read it earlier on today.
Chair, you've read that in condition 1. If you have my consolidated draft proposed conditions document available, it's got the hours at the top of the document. It then dives into proposed draft conditions, prevention of public nuisance.
I think so. Do you have a page number? Is it in the pack?
It's at page 2 of the Violet Cakes hearing bundle for email document.
Oh, okay. Anyway, the question is...
Yes, it says 11. I would explain, Chair, this is a standard wording from Hackney's model pool of conditions, and it states that the mode of operation must remain at a particular style. And where you've read it is, it states, save for takeaway service, the premises shall only operate with a bakery and cafe, in which customers are seated at tables where the supply of alcohol is by waiter-waitress service only, which provide food in the form of substantial table meals. which do not provide any takeaway service of food or drink after 11. So that's where it's saying nothing after 11. It's saying there won't be anything after 11, but that's because it comes from a standard worded condition. They would always be stuck with their licensed hours, which are for on and off sales. So there could be no off sales after 8:30, 9:30 respectively. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Patrick, any other areas of clarification? Do you want to discuss the outside space at all?
Yeah, I'm still. I can see a table chairs license which keeps disappearing. For the outside ground floor area, but I'm still sorry. I'm probably being thick, but I'm still not. So, are you suggesting that the first floor area is used for takeaways? That the Violet will provide tables and chairs, and that customers will be served up there alcohol and food.
Yes, exactly, Councillor. There's not much call for it because it's only the upstairs of a bakery unit, but the applicant would like the flexibility to use their off sales from their ground floor to be able to use that area when outside seating is simply out of the question. And it allows, as I say, up to 20 people inside, and they would be able to consume, well, to be supplied with alcohol ancillary to a purchase of food.
Well, that's not really off sales, is it?
It is, Councillor, if it's off of the licensed premises, and the licensed premises is intended to be the ground floor.
Okay, so you want to use the upstairs for a takeaway, but okay, but you don't want to include it in your license. All right, okay, fine. I'm clear now what we're talking about.
As I said, it's designed to give them occasional use and flexibility to either put people upstairs or put people to the side where they have their tables and chairs. And if I could just address the tables and chairs question as well, the premises did benefit from a tables and chairs permission that allowed them to place tables and chairs directly in front of the building on what we might describe literally as the pavement.
Yeah.
During the COVID period when everyone was shut, that wasn't renewed. And the premises have taken the decision not to place further tables and chairs in front of the building, although the markets team have indicated they would accept this as they've accepted it before. They wouldn't be looking to place them there during the COVID period to increase that pavement width, rather the available pavement width in front of the premises to assist with greater space for queuing and for people to pass with social distancing.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Just to speak about, Councillor Patrick, I just want to come in and talk about the spaces to the left of the building and to the right of the building as you look at it from the front. There's two spaces. The one to the left, that seems that we're not worried about that too much. That seems that it's just sitting there doing its thing. There's no plan to use the left-hand side. Is that correct?
My instructions are so that the land to, if I begin with the land to the right is very much public highway, and there is a public highways tables and chairs permission for it. The land to the left is actually some disused land owned by the council. So I would suggest it probably doesn't count as highway, but it's in public ownership. It's owned by the council. We have experimented with placing tables and chairs there for a couple of days, but we've moved them back to the licensed area on the right. However, I would suggest in the interest of trying to maintain flexibility, if the council are open to the idea of the left-hand side being used, that would actually displace customers from the right-hand side of the building, which is adjacent the public benches, although not comprising them, but it does come up to the edge of the public benches and could be used for tables and chairs away from that part of the public realm. Again, they would only be able to be used under our suggested license if any tables and chairs have been placed lawfully. If they're, for example, trespassing on council land, that would be a criminal offence to provide people there with alcohol.
So just to be clear, you said you have a table and chairs license for the land on the right-hand side.
On the right-hand side, absolutely, Chair. Okay. And that is copied at page, just so if you wish to look it up later, it's pages, bear with me, it's page 13, 14, and a photograph at page 15 of the Violet Cakes hearing bundle for email.
Okay, Councillor Patrick, can you see that?
Yeah, it's in the supplementary. I'm looking at it now.
Yeah. Can you just read a bit out for us? I can't find it.
Sorry, it says Name of the licensee, Claire Violet Cakes, address 47 Wilton Way. Class of articles, tables and chairs. No advertising boards may be placed on the highway as per section 9.10 of the Trade and Regulations. There's a licensing number. It's valid from the 9th of the 9th, 20 to the 8th of the 3rd, 21. Permitted trading days, Monday to Sunday, 8:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. Length of area, 3 meters, width 3.6 meters. But I don't know whether that photo.
Does that correspond to the
The photo, I understand, shows the tables and chairs put in place following having the markets team come down to set out the area, the available area.
Right, that's fine then.
You can see.
I don't know what that distance relates to.
I think I can see the logic of the markets team as well. If you look at the photograph that follows the license,
does that correspond to that plan?
That's what I've attempted to do with that supplementary plan, would just indicate that's where it is if it were to be a licensed area. Right. But as I say, we are proposing it would actually just be serviced by way of a conditioned off sale. If I could just note, Chair, the photograph that follows on from the tables and chairs license, in the right-hand side of the photograph, you can see one of the public benches. And it appears the markets team have effectively allowed the placing of tables and chairs up to, but not including, the public bench, which I would suggest makes all good sense.
Okay.
I can't see the public.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Patrick, are you happy now, content with those two issues a little bit more?
Yes, I am. I can understand now perfectly well. So that bench is a public bench. It's nothing. It's not anything to do with violets. That long white coloured bench that's by the white wall where there's a table.
No.
Is that what?
Sorry, Councillor. That white wall is Violet Cakes itself, and the bench is ours. If you look to the other side of the image, you'll see a dark brown bench with a green bag and a pink bag lying on it.
Oh, yep. Sorry, I've extended the photo now.
That's the public bench.
Right, thank you. Okay, so we need okay, I've seen that now, sorry. I had to expand the photo, I couldn't see it in the photo.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so we sort of...
So we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, that's useful.
Yeah.
Right.
So now we know what bench the residents are talking about as well.
Sorry, Claire, we sort of chipped in on
sorry.
Just a few points of clarification, but I would like you to come back on some of the points that the residents made, because obviously, you know, there's a big concern for us is how the residents are being affected, and I'd just like to give you some time to just come back on some of the points that they made, please, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really a big concern of mine too, because I know, hi Zoe, hi Debbie, I know both of you quite well. I've known you for 10 years that I've been there. And, thought we had a good relationship. Debbie and I have actually done a Play Streets event together, organized for the community. I donated loads of cakes. Zoe, we've exchanged lots of, you know, pleasantries, and I know you've had concerns over the years, but I do, you know, chat with you from time to time, and I thought we had a pretty good relationship. I care so much about litter. That's something that I'm constantly on my team about. Making sure the area is really clean, even if it's not our litter, because we could often come, you know, in the morning and people have dumped stuff there. It's a place a lot of fly tipping happens, and we're constantly calling the council and paying to actually have it collected. Also, the issue of the robbery. There were robberies 10 years ago. There was Robert was a customer whose laptop was stolen right out of his hands. It's true, we used to discourage people from using their laptops outside for that very reason, but I feel like in the last 10 years, the neighborhood has become a lot safer. Actually, we don't have people pulling up on mopeds stealing phones and iPads anymore, or laptops, sorry. So also the lines, the issue of the lines, I really understand that is not what everybody wants. Unfortunately, the laws with COVID require us to limit the amount of people that are in the premises, and also that they are socially distanced. So the lines look so long because people have to stand 2 meters apart. It's definitely not my preference. I always say, people say, oh, there's a line that's great for your business. And I always say, no, lines are bad for business because it means that we're not serving our customers fast and efficiently enough. So I try very hard to limit the lines, but of course the whole world is waiting in line at the moment. So there's not a whole lot I can do about that, unfortunately, but we do really make an attempt to keep people as close to the building as possible, to keep the lines orderly, and really to make sure that people can pass by. And that was, I know Marcus already mentioned this, but we decided to move the tables and chairs away from the front of the building so that locals could walk past or get past without having to leave the pavement and go into the street. So I really recognize all those issues, and I really just want to reiterate that I do a lot to try to mitigate those, because I don't want to disturb the neighbors. And also, just one last thing is, I actually lived on Wilton Way for up until 2 years ago. I lived there the entire time that I was running my business. I lived on the next block over. I am a local, I do care, and I know very much what it's like to live there. So yeah, I just want to say that because I just don't want that to be misunderstood. I really do care a lot. And I'm sorry that we've disrupted you at all. I hope that we can be better about that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to chip in at all? Any of the residents?
Chair, can I come in, please? It's Richard Bunt, Crime Disorder Consultant. Thank you. I've just been listening to the comments, obviously, all the way through this, and I'd just like to perhaps instill some confidence in both yourself and the residents of the area. I'm sure you've read my crime disorder pack and my previous career resume that's contained within that. And I was the former licensing officer for Westminster. I spent it in Hackney late August, early September with Claire, and walked the area, and even walked into the estate. And the estate is very well maintained, and I appreciate the residents' concerns in the fact they want to maintain that. I think what you need to appreciate is that the Violet Cakes business has been there for some time now. It operates very successfully, and without that premises being there, I'm sure that area with the public seating and benching would actually be an issue with regards to antisocial behaviour, because I think people using the local off licences and public houses would congregate in that area. Claire makes every effort to keep that business and that area really tidy and really free from antisocial behaviour. If you look at the crime figures and the crime statistics that I put in, there's actually no crime being recorded in the Wilton Way area for quite some time. And I think that is tantamount to the businesses and the Spurstow Arms and the other public houses in the area, and the shops and premises at the other end of Wilton Way, how they've actually improved and made every effort to ensure they operate successfully. And I think Violet Cakes is just looking to enhance their business. Everything they're doing has been set to be done so with the alcohol being served at ancillary to meals, and the fact that we have produced, and I have produced, and they are prepared to work with that, a very succinct and tight crime disorder policy, from drinking for challenge 25 to drunken disorderly policies, theft, everything we can possibly do to ensure that that premises will operate at the highest level
excuse me,
and not disturb residents. You will take into consideration the fact that police have not made an objection to this licensing application, which clearly identifies the fact that we are looking to operate well within the licensing objectives. And I put it to you that should you consider this licensing application, you will do so with real confidence.
Okay, thank you. Zoe?
I would just like to add a few points, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Right. For one, I would like to comment on Claire's saying that they only use, they have taken over the complete area from left to right. Now, I personally witness this on a daily, it's a daily occurrence. I hear that you have somebody, a specialist who has drawn up what Hackney Council licensing want to see. But I live here, we live here, and we see actually what happens. I appreciate that Claire is doing her best. And yes, I find her a nice person. It's not personal. Well, I see what happens here, and there's some truths not being told here. You have continuously occupied both sides without regard for people passing by. And that is how it continues. The littering, that again is an untruth. You can't be there 24/7 to pick up litter. People walk along the road with your boxes and your bags, and they continuously drop them. You know, I don't expect Claire to be running behind them, monitoring them, but these are facts. These are things that are happening. Going back to crime, I'd like to say statistics are not actual and factual. There are many crimes committed daily, hourly, that are not reported and do not become statistical. We live in the midst of that. So for me personally, using statistics has no bearing. This is what we live with. And Claire is fully aware of that. When somebody promises to live by licensing laws or rules, or however you would put it, but yet hasn't bothered to deal or to live by the just basic standards, for instance, gutting her premises without planning permission. Facts. We're going to expect her now to be a good girl and do everything planning and the licensee want them to do. You haven't up to this point. So why would I have confidence and faith in you that you are now going to come along and do the right thing? That is all I want to say. Thank you.
Claire, would you like to come back? I think you deserve an opportunity to come back on this, please.
Sorry, before Claire does, just if I could speak on the legal element of that. I'm sure Claire will have an operational input, but if I could just address one thing. Internal refurbishment of a building doesn't require planning permission unless it's grade 1 listed. That you just don't require planning permission to internally refurbish your building.
Down walls. To knock down
internally,
internal
refurbishment is not an element that requires planning permission.
Well, that's not what we've been. Well, sorry, but we've been led to believe differently. So if I've got that wrong, I apologise. But also areas that have been established that belong to the council that have now been taken over and occupied by Claire, having her workmen knock it out. Admittedly, it was an area which people used to use to urinate, but she's taken it over, you know, and the people are constantly out there daily. I don't appreciate the untruths that are being told here.
If I could just follow on, Chair, having mentioned the planning issue, it is clearly something that the residents claim, that apparently we have tables and chairs on the left-hand side and the right.
But that's true.
Having tables and chairs on the left-hand side of the building and the right-hand side of the building. No issue has ever been raised by the markets team who inspect tables and chairs placement. So, and no representation has been made by anybody from the markets team, I would suggest probably through the licensing authority, to suggest that we have occupied the left and the right simultaneously, for one thing. But regardless, and this is an important change in the granting of any premises license, putting a premises license in place puts an entire new regime of control at the hands of the council for this premises. If anybody is sat on a table or chair that's not lawfully placed under the conditions we've put in, and they are served with alcohol, that's a criminal offence. You have a world-class licensing enforcement division. We ourselves have placed on the Violet Cakes website a complaints and monitoring system so that anybody who wishes to can formally record their complaints, and those can be inspected by any authorized officer. And any suggestion that, one, Claire Patak is lying when it comes to planning permission or similar, I would suggest doesn't appear to be that well founded. But if there is an issue over the placement of tables and chairs, either on the disused land on the left, the highway on the right, or even the highway to the front of the building, if that isn't done in line with correct permissions, it's a criminal offence for them to be served with alcohol. Simple as that.
Councillor Smith.
Yep.
So I've got a question. I may have got this wrong, but under the proposed license, I understand that you're saying about the tables and chairs that you put out, but there's nothing to stop people buying food and drink from Violet and sitting on tables and chairs.
Well, actually, Councillor Patrick, that wouldn't be possible, because if the way in which alcohol is served, we serve the alcohol to the customer whilst they're sat. Therefore,
but not as a takeaway.
Yes, that's true. If somebody wished to order it as a takeaway, they could indeed buy it and simply wander where they wished. But that is true of anybody who simply attends either the Spurstow Arms, or more importantly, the off license that's just down the road. And we would suggest if someone wants to purchase alcohol and drink it on the street, there are far more affordable and convenient ways for them to do that than to come to us. I would suggest simply business realities are, if somebody wants to buy a drink and sit on the bench and create public nuisance by doing so, they'll just pick up that drink from one of the off licenses. If they come to us, we're likely to be more expensive on the purchase of the drink, and they will have to buy food at the same time. But once people have done that, they're free to walk as and where they wish. If it's of concern to the council, I'm sure the operator would accept some form of requirement for them to inform anybody who purchases that if they're taking it away, they must either leave the vicinity or sit at one of our tables and chairs. And if they indicate to us that they wish to sit at one of the benches, we simply won't retail them alcohol.
Is the idea with the takeaway to give the opportunity to sort of take away upstairs? Is that the general idea? I mean, is it part of the business plan that you need to have a takeaway element? Because obviously, if that was gone, that would sort of absorb that issue.
So the takeaway element would service the outside tables and chairs and the upstairs in the building, depending on the season. As you can imagine, in the middle of summer, no one wants to sit upstairs. In the middle of winter, only the brave souls will sit outside on the benches. The white bench that we have and the white chairs that we have there. So again, that's why there is an off-sales provision. But I would suggest, if the concern from the council is nuisance caused by persons making takeaway purchases, at the end of the day, we're a bakery and you have to buy baked goods and then you're allowed to buy some alcohol before you're allowed to leave. In fact, you have to be, as I say, served with it, or you could take it and wander off. If you would like me to take instructions on whether we simply would only serve alcohol to persons seated at tables that we are lawfully placing, and there is no off-sales provision, I can, if possible, we can just go on mute and I can take some instructions directly from my client.
Yep.
Could I just, before you do that, I would like you to do that, but I just want to understand how you put the upstairs would operate, in the sense that people buy alcohol, buy baked goods or food, and take it upstairs, and the alcohol comes served, or it comes in locked bottles.
That's exactly it, councillor. People would get their baked goods. If they're available directly at the counter, they can take them upstairs rather than eat them outside. Alcohol would then be served to them whilst they were sat with food.
So that's not really takeaway, is it?
It's not a takeaway, councillor, but it is an off sale for the purposes of the license.
Okay, so if we granted that, we could condition that regarding noise or hours.
You
Is
could
that right?
condition, you can
Or could be
condition,
Amanda.
you could condition numbers, hours, or even location. I think Amanda's on mute.
Yes, yes, that's correct. Yes.
I'm just concerned we're hearing from the residents about noise and stuff, and about this upstairs area that seems to have creeped into the plans.
If I could just say, Chair,
Yeah.
I've noted that the Environmental Protection Officer arrived after the start of the item, and I don't know if he's had a chance to speak, because I don't think he was.
There's no representation.
There's no
from
representation.
Okay.
Okay.
There is in the next one, but not this one.
I would
I'm
like to go
guessing
back
they've
to
turned up
Claire,
early.
though. I think we need to give Claire just an opportunity to come back on what some of the residents have said, please.
But are we going to let Marcus take instructions from Claire first?
Oh, okay, okay.
That would be helpful, because that might solve an issue. Let me take instructions.
Okay, so we should just pause then for a couple of minutes, maybe.
That would, if we could.
Is that possible, Amanda?
Can we take adjourn for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yes,
yes, fine.
we can do that. Yes, we can. Yeah.
Then that's fair on everybody.
Okay.
People can go
Okay.
non-visual maybe if they want to. They don't have to physically leave the meeting.
Okay, so I'll set my stopwatch now.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, shall we all come back now, if you can hear me? Thank you. Okay, so decision?
Well, Chair, it will of course remain our position that this is a bakery that sells baked goods and hopes to sell some alcohol with it. Street drinking doesn't appear to be something we would have an impact on. However, Claire has listened to the concerns of the members and the neighbours, and if the risk of street drinking is one of those things that everyone's afraid of the unknown and what it may cause, we would be happy to amend the application so that off sales would only be made to persons seated at lawfully placed tables. So that's us to our tables that we've got on the tables and chairs license, or to our little upstairs facility, weather dependent. But it wouldn't allow somebody to simply buy alcohol, even with food, and wander out onto the street. We would ask, however, that we're able to retain home delivery service, because of course that by its nature doesn't involve street drinking. It involves the person staying in their own home and receiving baked goods and a bottle of wine or whatever it may be.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Councillor Patrick, how does that sound to you? Microphone.
Yeah, sorry, I've just.
Does that give you any more reassurance?
It does some, but my concern. So these tables and chairs, I keep going back to it. Sorry, on the roof or the first floor, they would be legally placed.
Yes, they would. At the end of the day, we're looking at up to 20 people sat inside a building, consuming food and having some alcohol with their food within hours that go as late as 8:30 and 9:30 on Fridays and Saturdays. So we would suggest there is limited risk associated with that.
So that's not what I asked. So you're saying that the tables but you don't need a license for the tables and chairs upstairs because they're in your building.
That is
or
correct.
On your roof.
No, they're not on the roof, Councillor. They are inside the building in the
first
floor. Yeah, they're inside the building in the first floor, and therefore they would, of course, be lawfully placed because they're inside our building.
So why not just add them to the license?
Because the upstairs area is designed to be just flexible space. It may be used for storage or all kinds of things by the business. And certainly during the summer, when nobody wishes to sit up there, it could be used for all kinds of things. So rather than having to risk having to alter the plan of a licensed premise each time the upstairs is changed, downstairs won't be changing. Therefore, it's the fixed licensed premises that must show on a licensed plan, whereas upstairs is simply vacant space at the moment. If anything were to be done to that and it were to be a licensed premises, variations would have to be applied for each and every time. As it stands, it can remain as flexible space, and if people are sat at tables and chairs there and eating, they would be able to be served with alcohol. So that's the reason. Councillor Patrick, there's no nefarious intent with the upstairs. It's just most of the year it's not used by any of the customers.
Okay.
Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, Claire, if you're willing, you obviously don't have to, but I would just like to hear just a little bit of comeback to some of the concerns that the residents were raising on Wilton Way estate. Claire?
Sorry, I was just trying to get my mic on. I mean, I feel like I've tried to address those. I don't know specifically what else I can say about that. I mean, I really try to run a really responsible business that wouldn't be disruptive. So
there's one comment about deliveries very early in the morning, around 7 a.m. Maybe you could sort of talk to that.
Okay, sure. Yes, Zoe was saying that to avoid congestion charge. I'm not sure about that. I know that our deliveries most deliveries do come from outside of London, because we also, so we get, like we have our fresh eggs and milk and all that kind of stuff delivered, and they're usually coming from farms just outside London. So I can't really control what time they deliver them, unfortunately. But we do, generally most of our deliveries come within business hours. I think it's really just the eggs, and occasionally maybe flour that they deliver before we open. We start baking at 6. So yeah, so that occasionally there would be like a delivery, but I think that they try really hard to be conscientious because they obviously know they're in a neighborhood and that's their delivery.
And you mentioned you mentioned litter, and they mentioned litter as well. The residents, people buying boxes and kind of how far do you extend the little sort of clear up outside the building kind of thing? Is it across the road or?
Yeah, like I said, I used to live on Wilton Way, and I've only just moved away 2 years ago, just kind of up the road, still in Hackney. I'm just like one of those people that's always picking up litter, whether or not it's mine, even though it's like, litter and dirty and it's COVID and everybody's paranoid about that kind of stuff. I literally like get out of my car if I'm driving or if I'm walking down from my house and I pick up litter along the way when I get into the vicinity. I just did today when I was down there, actually. I think that we've put out extra bins now because obviously more the seating is outside, because that's what we're being asked to do from the government, is to be outside more in restaurants. So there are more people. I think it feels like there's more people outside because that's part of what's happened in hospitality. So yes, and then of course there's more takeaway. So we really made efforts. We've bought new bins. We have our KPs constantly going around and picking them up, and I think everybody on the team is really conscientious of that. So sometimes it's terrible. The wind has been really bad too, and it can take a paper napkin down the road, but or a cupcake case. But I think generally I don't really see a lot of extra litter. And like I said before, the area to the left of Violet was a big area of fly tipping, and we had people constantly dumping loads of crazy huge things like furniture the whole time in lockdown. There were like abandoned cars. There were like prunings from garden waste, all kinds of stuff, and we had it all cleared away. So I mean, I'm
going to ask you. I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you a difficult question. Where do you think some of this bad blood has come from? And do you think that having a license would give you a structure to kind of, maybe prevent some of the stuff that you've been accused of from happening again?
Yeah, sure. I think having a license is, yes, would provide structure. I do feel the bad blood sometimes comes as a surprise because, as I said, I have a good, friendly relationship with 2 people that are on the here tonight at the hearing. But I understand also that, change is difficult, and when you live in a place, and I know Zoe had a business on Wilton Way years ago as well, and she understands what it's like to run a business and locally, sort of live there and work there. And concerns come up all the time when things change. And so I really recognize that, which is why I try to have a kind of open, friendly relationship with people and try to hear their concerns on a daily basis. And, I often bring cakes over to residents, at the end of the day, and we've got leftovers, does anybody want some cakes? And we box them up and bring them to people. So, yeah, I understand that change is hard for people. And obviously the threat of noise when you live right there is really something you don't want to deal with. But I think that's, we've addressed that with our early hours. And and no music outside, that's another big one. No, I think, for me, again, it's really not about a rowdy crowd drinking. It's really not the thing. It's really about, our cakes and our, we do some quiches and things, and that you would just have maybe a glass of wine with that. Or like I said before, take your mom and have a cake and a tea in a kind of more modern setting. But we have we'll have like a dispersal policy that's, in place, and we'll really take a lot of care and take measures to make sure that people leave quietly and on time. So.
Okay, thank you, Claire, very much. I would like to give the opportunity, if you don't mind, Councillor Patrick and everyone else, just to Zoe and Debbie, just to come back for 1 minute each, just on what Claire's just said. Councillor
Smith, could I talk? It's Debbie.
Yeah, of course.
Claire and Councillor Smith, I don't think it's not bad blood. I kind of object to that phrase being used, because that's not what I feel. You know, Claire's got a business. We've watched it grow. We have supported it. We've worked together. But I feel that the impact of 7 days a week is felt very much by the residents. It did start being, it was a Tuesday to Saturday business. Then then it started on Sundays, and there was always Mondays was a down day, and now there is no rest day from activity. And when people are sat outside, it is noisy, and it's not, you know, it is just the nature of it. So I think if there was a rest day between all of this, and I think COVID, with that whole quiet period, has made residents realise how much external noise we've been absorbing over the years, and the increase, the business is extremely popular, and it has put a more strain, and it's a small site. It's not suitable. I know at one point Claire was perhaps looking at a larger premises on Mare Street for this idea of having cake and wine, and I would wholeheartedly support something that isn't in such a sort of small residential area. I just feel that where it is just slightly wrong, and I just worry that once a license is granted, that it might extend, as the business has extended, to include more days, more hours, and longer activity. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's kind of reassuring that there's no bad blood there. Zoe.
Yes, as Debbie said, there is no bad blood. One thing has nothing to do with the other. I simply, as I said from the beginning, it's about quality of life. And, you know, things have been chaotic over there for a long time. And as far as I'm concerned, yes, I run a business for many years on Wilton Way. So if anyone understands why Claire wants to add an alcohol license to it, I totally get it. But I live here and have done since 1985. I welcome change. Change is a must. But the one thing I don't appreciate and find very hard to accept is the constant loud noise, children running around. There will be a child knocked down before long because they are not monitored properly. There are so many things that I would like to say, but obviously haven't got the time to. But it's too much too long. We've supported Claire in all her doings here and admired her more so. So it's nothing to do with bad blood. It's all to do with quality of life, which we're entitled to and we pay for. And when Claire starts spilling out, as the pub does, as the little place across the road and the end of Wilton Way, it is a total nightmare here. We have people, as Debbie has said already, coming at the back of the estate with bottles of drink. It's party time. Yes, I appreciate people must have fun. But all I'm saying, as I've said all along, is I want to live in my home. She opens from 7:30 every morning. They're banging down tables, and those plastic seats or tables or whatever they are, I have asked several times. I have shown concern too many times to mention, and it's never stopped. It continues. When children are playing, naturally, they're constantly banging them, throwing them around. There is not the control that has been said here, but who knows? We'll see.
Zoe, I just want to ask you one last question very quickly. So I don't want to prolong this any more than it needs to be.
Oh, I'd like to come in.
Sheila?
Yeah, I'd like to
Sheila?
come in after Zoe. Could I come in after Zoe?
Yeah, you can, Sheila. You've just joined the meeting, haven't you?
No, I've been trying to join this meeting for a long time, since the beginning of the meeting, and I'm having problems.
Okay,
So
Sheila, I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes.
I want to come in after Zoe.
Sorry?
Could I come in after Zoe, please?
Yeah, Zoe. What would you like to see happen there?
Well, it's a difficult question. I mean, I personally think it's fine as it is. Why add alcohol into the mix when you've already got people up and down this road on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, sometimes a Monday? It's chaotic. There's no peace here whatsoever. And when they can no longer sit on the benches because people often open their doors and tell them to go, they will come at the back of the estate and make the noise and mess about round here, urinating in people's gardens, throwing bottles. Now, I'm not saying they're coming from Clare or it's all about Clare, but this is what the behaviour has been encouraging. This is, it's not right to think that you can, I mean, local businesses should involve or aim or include, should I say, be more inclusive of the surrounding areas. But this isn't. This is aiming at a market, a certain type of market, where a lot of ordinary Mr. Joe blogs in this area cannot afford to use the facility, and they're not welcomed. And that is a fact. So
Okay.
I've seen so much here, and I've never had the opportunity to really say. So like I said, I think I've said enough. But again, I want to say I have no problem with Claire herself.
Okay. Thank you for that. Sheila, 2 minutes.
Hi. Okay, sorry. I do apologise to Zoe for butting in, and I do apologise because I've been trying to get in for ages. So I'm sorry if I've caused any issues. I just want to make a couple of salient points, and just to say that Zoe and Debbie have brilliantly articulated what is important to the community, but my points are very much to do with the statutory and legal requirements. In respect of the government's COVID risk guidance, can I be assured that the business has provided a COVID-19 risk assessment, and it would be really good to share that. Can I also be assured that the business has an official NHS QR code poster, and I'd like to see that, or physically on the premises. And secondly, in respect of the council's own licensing policy 2018, I would like the council and this committee to be assured that LP1, LP2, LP3, LP5 and LP11 are robustly met. And perhaps that could be minuted so that we could get a response back to that. And also to ask that that the council confirm the proposed permitted development pursuant to the General Permitted Development Order 1995 as amended, that they are robustly satisfied with that, and that these planning objectives are not likely to harm, these planning objectives are not likely to be harmed by this proposal, and also that we believe as a community that there is a cumulative negative effect by this proposed application, and we would ask that all these considerations are brought into play so that somehow this application can be amended to not just maximize profit, but to meet community needs, because community needs and well-being are now being minimized. So we'd like those. I'm happy to put any of this in writing or provide it in another form, but I'm sure that's my 2 minutes up. But I just wanted to put these salient points in respect of the process of this application, because my friends and my community has spoken eloquently about the social aspects.
Yeah. Amanda, would you like to come back on some of those legal
Yes,
points?
thanks, Chair. I was going to ask that.
Because I think some of that's a little bit beyond our remit, particularly the sort of planning.
Well, it isn't beyond your remit. I'm sorry, it's not beyond your remit, because this information I got exactly from your London Borough of Hackney website on the planning subcommittee
That's why
details.
we're asking our lawyer.
That's planning and we're licensing. Well, sorry, licensing. Sorry, on the licensing information that was provided to us by your governance assistant, I went on the website and exactly all this information is there. So this is not without any remit. This is absolutely salient to this remit.
Yeah, but this is a licensing meeting, not a planning meeting. Anyway,
No, I just
Amanda.
said I went on the licensing committee website.
Okay,
so my
thank you
fault.
very much, Sheila. Amanda, would you like to come back, please?
Yes, yes. I mean, basically, what I was going to say is, thank you, Sheila, for setting out the legal requirements that you're seeking. In respect of the COVID risk assessment and NHS QR codes, etc., that's something that all premises are required to have at the moment. So that is a legal requirement. It's not specific to licensing, but it's something that they all premises are required to have. So they would have to have that regardless of this application. In terms of the licensing policies that you've set out, LP1, LP2, LP5 and LP11, we do take those into consideration when making our decision as to the impact that the application has on the area, and so we will take those into consideration. In terms of the planning issues, all we can do is maybe put a planning informative, suggesting that Claire checks with the planning department that she has the correct planning requirements in place. We don't have any jurisdiction over planning, but all we can do is, with a lot of the items you said which aren't licensing related, all we can do is suggest that Claire or the applicant ensures that they have obtained the necessary legal requirements for these things. And also, everything you've said will be taken into consideration generally, but obviously we're only limited to consider the licensing aspects of it. So anything else is usually put down on our decision as a public informative, just generally advising the applicant what they should be doing. But I think she would know about some of that already anyway. I'm sure Mr. Lavelle would have checked and reminded her if there isn't anything in place, but I'm sure it's a standard procedure that she is going through at the moment, and as all premises are. So I hope that covers everything.
Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you so
Amanda.
much. It's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Happy to make a freedom of information request anytime.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Sheila.
Okay.
Okay, I think if everyone's happy, I think we've had a kind of fairly broad discussion. I hope you all feel that you've had an opportunity to kind of say what you wanted to say, and we've heard both sides of the story. I'd like to go to closing remarks now, if that's okay with everyone. That's step 7. So if I could ask the licensing officer just to come back, Mr. Chewett, with your final sort of final closing remarks, please.
Thank you, Chair. I still have to. I still have two main areas of concern. Really, it's just the inclusion of the first floor, which wasn't included in the first application when it was first received. You can see from the plan that it was drawn back in June, but we got the application in July. There was no reason that I can see as to why that first floor wasn't included in the application, therefore included when we consulted on the application. So did the responsible authorities see that part of the application? So I'm not comfortable with that being part of this license if you're minded to grant it. And also I still have the concerns about the use of the external area. Mr. Lavelle's made a suggestion of condition around tables and chairs being that can be used have to be lawfully placed, but the public benches are lawfully placed, so that would allow those public benches to be used. Any future tables and chairs license would enable tables and chairs to be lawfully placed, but it wouldn't give the residents, as you've heard very much, quite strong representations from residents tonight, their concern about the use of the external parts of the premises. If the agreed external part of the premises that's enclosed in the plan today is the licensed area, or is included within the licensed area, any changes to that would require variation and consultation, so residents would be able to get involved in that process. If it remains just a requirement under Highways Act, so tables and chairs licensed under Highways Act, then there's no such consultation, so residents wouldn't be aware. They'll just see the external areas grow in size, which I'm just not comfortable with that being how, if you are minded to grant, that being how the external areas could develop over time.
Yeah, David, what would you propose?
If you are minded to grant, I would still like to see the off cells removed. The 3 meters by 3.6 square meters area that our colleagues over the market service have granted, I think the external area should be limited to that.
Is that the frontage you're talking about?
No, so the areas to the side, isn't it?
Oh, to the right.
To the right-hand side, yeah. I feel that should be the extent of any external areas, and that is because we know exactly what that area is. It's shown on the plan, and the residents are clear on what that space is. And you know, if that area
is that the plan that Mr. Lavelle submitted?
Yeah, so the revised plan that we received yesterday, and we also could see that our colleagues in market service have granted a tables and chairs license for it. But if there's to be a further tables and chairs license or expansion of that existing area, that would require variation under Licensing Act, which means that residents would be clear that any external areas, there's an intention to change that.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, we've had other persons. You can have another little opportunity to come back in for a minute or two. Anybody from, you know, Zoe, Debbie, Sheila, Amanda?
Yes, if I may, I would just like to add, Claire herself told me that she had leased the both side. Well, she'd leased one side from the council, and those were her words, which it's obvious that aren't true by what are being said here tonight. She said she leases it and therefore could use it and was making it look nice for us as well as herself. The point is, it's a highly residential area. There are properties that are adjacent to Violet's that have young families with children of school age. All of this is having and has had, and I'm sure will continue to have, a massive impact on the quality of people's lives. Thank you.
Okay. Debbie or Sheila, 1 minute each.
Councillor Smith, I'm fine. I think I've said everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sheila, would you like to have a minute? She gone? She seems to have disappeared. Sheila, are you there?
Sheila's on mute.
Yep. Your microphone, Sheila, if you can hear me. You need to unmute it.
You need to unmute your phone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi there,
Can you hear me
Sheila.
now?
1 minute. Yep.
Right, 1 minute. In the bundle of papers, there was a section called disorder, and there was a statement by Violet, and then there was Violet's business, and then there was other paperwork. In the section which highlighted, the paragraph highlighted disorder, and I quote, "Current clients, that is clients of Violet's, do not buy Class A drugs from Wilton Estate." This is a strange thing to say. If you mean current clients of Wilton of Violet's do not buy drugs from Wilton Estate, well, Wilton Estate does not sell drugs. If you mean drug dealers that come onto Wilton Estate, then say that, but don't say drugs from Wilton Estate, because we don't sell anything on Wilton Estate. So that I find that very upsetting and disturbing, and I'm surprised that your legal section hasn't amended that, because as it stands, it's slanderous.
Okay, thank you, Sheila.
Okay.
So now we've maybe the applicant, the lawyer, maybe wants to come back, or Claire, or whoever.
If I could just cover off some of the points that have been raised, and then Claire could just end with just her personal position on that, Chair.
Yep.
I think that would be useful.
Okay, thank you.
Just bear with me. Just to cover off some of the things that Zoe raised, and these are certainly relevant issues when it comes to antisocial behaviour in the area and things the residents have to deal with. But if we look at the things she raised, people spilling out is something she's concerned about. Now, people can spill out from somewhere like the Spurstow Arms, stand on the other side of the road, stand around drinking, and effectively block people getting into the Wilton estate. They can then wander through the estate. Alcohol will only be served to people sat at tables. And I'll deal with Mr. Chewett's comment in a minute if I can.
Yeah.
Therefore, people sat at tables are far more easy to manage than people who are simply allowed lawfully to wander out from a premises holding a drink and chat to their friends wherever they choose to walk. Especially with the restriction now that there's no off-sale sought for people to simply take alcohol from the premises. I would suggest that's not the same risk, especially when Zoe mentioned that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights is when it gets really bad. As a premises, we're not open at night. Even our license isn't designed to open in the night, although it does go into the evening. So again, the chance of people with bottles of drink from the premises wandering into the estate and then using that as their local party, that's not possible under the license that we've applied for. If I was to just then address solely the issue raised by your licensing officer, where he states firstly, the inclusion of the first floor gives him concerns, and other authorities should have made, could be consulted on it. At the end of the day, this application involved a full off-sales license. It has a ground floor that people can literally have consumption on the premises. It also has a flexible space upstairs, which isn't used for most of the year. The police have made no representation in this matter. Would they, if they felt people could, as well as taking alcohol off sales to drink anywhere, have complained that people could drink inside the building, up to 20 of them whilst they're having food? Do we think that the environmental health officer would have had concerns when the environmental health officer had no concerns about people drinking outside with food? Would they have had concerns about people drinking inside in a more controlled environment with food? I would suggest that's unlikely. But in terms of your officer's concern that effectively by changing the pavement license or the highways license, that would change where people could drink, that is indeed true. And it would avoid the need for Claire to have to come back to a licensing committee every time she wants to change where her tables and chairs are or the number. But as we have seen, the number's already been decided on by the Markets Authority. They don't wish it to go past the public benches. And importantly, it's doing your markets team a disservice to say that if any application is made to increase where these tables and chairs are, they will simply grant it. If that was all it took, we wouldn't have a markets team. We just lodge an application, pay a fee, and put our tables and chairs wherever we wished. The markets team are aware that there's a risk of noise nuisance, public obstruction, and other things from the placing of tables and chairs. So I would suggest that the conditioned off sales provision is solid as it stands. The one thing I would say that Mr. Stewart raises, which I think really does cut through it, he's quite right. Those public benches, I would suggest, are lawfully placed. But that can be dealt with simply by stating none of the public street furniture in the vicinity is to be used as a place where alcohol can be served to. And that eliminates any risk from that whatsoever. So I would still suggest off sales, correctly conditioned, address all necessary concerns, especially within the hours that we're talking about and with the numbers of people we're talking about. 20 people sat inside a building up till 8:30, with them leaving by 9 during the week, and up until 9:30 later in the week. Up to, at the moment, about 13, 14 people outside, increasing without COVID requirements for social distancing up to potentially 20. Again, we're not looking at large numbers, and we're not looking at them going late into the night. And we're looking at all of them doing what they do in association with food. And we're in an area where if someone simply wishes to drink and sit in the street, they'll go to the Spurstow Arms, it's a minute away, or they'll go to the off license. And it sounds as if they go to the off license and then walk around the estate and cause nuisance late on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, which cannot be pleasant, cannot be pleasant for the residents. But I would suggest the conditions we have put forward means that that isn't something that's going to happen just by a customer from Violet Cakes doing those things. But that's enough for me just sticking with the points. One thing I would say, I think it's to Sheila, who raised the issues of the various licensing policies. She said she had to come in and out of the meeting. When we began, those paragraphs I was referring to were addressing the licensing policies, and the other forms of training the management policies that have been put in place all go towards the various Hackney licensing policies throughout. I appreciate Sheila may not have been able to hear that if she wasn't able to attend fully throughout the hearing. But hopefully she can probably listen to this back, I would have thought, on some form of recorded device, and she'll hear my submissions on those. But that's it very much from me. If I could simply allow Claire to finish off, as she is the business owner and local resident.
Yep, absolutely. Claire.
I just wanted to say one other thing about, we keep talking about 20 people upstairs and outside and all these numbers. It's so highly unlikely that every table would be full of people drinking. I mean, I can't express enough how most of our customers, I know that the children thing seems to be another issue with Zoe, but it's really families. It's like quite often, you know, kids come after, like Gayhurst School and London Fields Primary, like a lot of parents and families like come to Violet after school and have our mini cupcakes, which you know, are like £1.50. But so it's like, it's not like we're going to be like suddenly turn into a bar because we have this license. It's like a few people, we're going to have a glass of wine or a beer, I think, on a, you know, a nice lunch or a special occasion. But really, it's like it's like mostly families. So I just can't imagine that like every table full of drinking. So just wanted to like mitigate that fear, because the way that everybody's talking about it sounds like it's going to be like every single table's got a drink, which is just wouldn't be it's not that kind of place. So.
Okay, thank you, Claire. And just Councillor Patrick, just to give you an opportunity for any other areas of clarification, points of clarification that you might want to raise. Amanda?
Thank you. I'm not sure if it's a point of clarification, but I'm still unhappy with the takeaway for the outside area. And I think it's a disrespect to the residents, Mr. Lavelle, to say that the business shouldn't have to come back if they want to move the tables and chairs or whatever. And so, I mean, our markets team have placed the tables and chairs that they have probably in the light of COVID, but COVID hopefully won't be here forever. And the business could apply for a change or to increase them. If COVID's not around, our market team may agree. I don't know, but I do think that I would like to include that area as part of the license, so that if there is a change, if we do agree to license the premises, that area is part of the business, so that they do have to come back if there is tables and chairs, because we've heard substantially from the local residents about their fears about noise and disruption, and even noise and disruption that happens now without an alcohol license. Claire keeps saying it's families, and she doesn't expect every table to be full of people drinking. I hope it stays that way. But you never know what's going to happen in the future. Nobody expected COVID, and you know, it'd be nice. I suppose it'd be more profit for her business if there was more people drinking. Otherwise, she wouldn't be asking for this license. So we always have to think of the worst, not the best, in the sense of what's going to happen to an alcohol premises. So I do think that I would like to suggest, and would seriously like to ask Miss Claire to consider accepting that the alcohol license cover the outside area.
Okay, maybe Amanda, you might want to come back on that point. Or licensing even, David.
Well, David's already explained that he would if members were minded to grant, that he would only be prepared for them to include the area that's been approved by markets already, which is that 3.6 section. So that's the only area that would be that he'd be happy with. Any further extension would need to go through a further consultation process, so that residents are aware of it. Otherwise, they won't, you know, see what's happening. With markets, they do have a short consultation, but it's under the current procedures. But it's not very long. It's only about a week or 10 days, something like that. But yes, so it's only the area that David's already said that you'd be able to consider, which is a defined area. The questions I wanted to ask quickly, I don't know if it's been touched on already, so apologies if I'm repeating anything, is that what, when the application was being made or given the concerns by residents, did the owner, Claire, did she do anything to try and overcome these objections by local residents? And in terms of going forward, is she going to continually be monitoring, and you know what steps are going to be taken? I mean, I'm not 100% sure whether or not the local residents here are happy with what she's suggesting in terms of what you know, what she's going to do going forward. But you know, is there any measures that's going to be taken to deal with any of these concerns going forward?
If you want to come back in, Claire, you can, or maybe your lawyer wants to come back in. Mr. Lavelle.
I would simply note that in response to Amanda's comment, sorry, the reason I lean down, my microphone is down here. In the preparation for the premises license itself, the business has seen a change in the way it's now got a training regime that's committed to in its management policies. And it's also got, as I say, it would have a suite of new conditions. Those policies are designed to address any issues that may come up, including, as I've stated before, there's even a new complaints handling procedure that's automated on the website. So if any local resident wishes to record a complaint about what's going on at the premises, that will be electronically stored through, and it's simply there on the Violet Cakes website for them to do so. So there's greater collection of complaints, handling of complaints. There's a training regime mandated by the new management policies. So those things relate to retail of alcohol, as you might expect, but also noise nuisance and the way in which customers are handled, controlled and dispersed. And all of those should be in the documents for everybody to see.
Okay, great. Okay, folks, I think, you know, I've given a lot of time to everyone to kind of, you know, air all of your views. We've heard all your views, and obviously we'll have to go away now and consider all of those views. So if I could ask, thank you for everyone for joining this meeting. And now if I could ask you all to leave, that would be great. And you will hear about the decision, I think, within 5 days or something like that. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. We now have to move on to the next one because we have another one after this.
Thank you very much. Thank you, officers. Thank you, residents. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so we just wait for a few seconds before we start the next one. Okay, Mario, is everyone gone that should be gone? Hello, Mario. I think they've all gone.
Councillor. So we have a Andre King and as well as a Tom Hunter on the call.
Okay.
As well as a Sarah.
Sarah Clover. Good evening.
Yeah. Okay, what we're doing now is we're moving on to this next one, which is agenda item number 8. Lion and Lamb, 46 Fanshawe Street, Hackney, N1. So if we could just introduce ourselves very briefly. I know we've done this already, but I'm Councillor Smith, Stoke Newington. I'm the chair. Councillor Patrick.
Councillor Sean Patrick, Kings Park Ward.
Yeah. Sarah.
Good evening, Chair. My name is Sarah Clover. I'm the barrister for Mr. King on behalf of the premises.
Okay, thank you very much. Amanda.
Sorry. Hello, good evening. I'm Amanda North from Legal Services, assisting members. Thank you.
Yeah. Andre King. Andre.
Sorry, my microphone was off. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, who are you?
I'm Andre King, owner of the Lion and Lamb.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you, Andre.
Good evening.
Okay, Mr. Chewett.
Hi, I'm David Tewett, Licensing Authority.
Okay. Anyone else there?
Yeah.
Greetings.
Hi.
Hello.
What's your name?
Thanks for having us. This is Tom Hunter and Catherine Hunter. We're the ones who applied for the license review.
Ah, okay. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Anybody else there that we need to know about?
I'm an licensing officer.
Yeah, thank you.
Then Olalekan Olashibikon, Environmental Protection Team.
Oh, fantastic. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so Mr. Hunter, were you at the start of the proceedings? Do I need to go through the hearing procedure and all of that stuff?
We were 10 minutes late coming in. We're on some technical difficulties, which Mario will back us up on.
Okay, well, I'll just
we have watched, so I think we get the hang of it. But if there's anything particular you need to tell us, now is the moment.
Yeah, well, I'll just go through the hearing procedure basically.
Cool.
We hear from the licensing officer first, then we hear from the applicant, then we hear from responsible authorities, other persons. After that, we have a discussion, closing remarks, clarification, and then basically everyone leaves and we consider the whole thing. So we will start off by inviting the principal licensing officer to outline the case, please.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing Service received an application for the review of premises license from a local resident under Section 51 of the Licensing Act 2003 for 46 Fonshaw Street on the grounds of prevention of public nuisance, as stated in the agenda. The licensing, environmental protection, and other person objection remains. We have received supporting documents from the licensee, which has been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. So now, the applicant, if they wouldn't mind presenting their case.
I believe that's us, yes?
Yep.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Catherine first.
Hi, everyone. So I'm aware I've got limited time, so I'm just
You've
going
got five minutes approximately.
Yes. So I'm just going to read from a prepared statement. So apologies if I'm looking down rather than at you. So I'm Catherine Havelock, Catherine Hunter when I'm married, and I'm the legal owner and primary resident of Flat 55 Burt House since 2005. For context, Flat 55 is in the 4th floor of a 5-story flat block. This means that, like Simon in Flat 40 Fairchild House across from us, we're in prime place to experience noise leakage from the top of the venues, such as heavy bass music. The Hackney Council website states, the council expects that noise associated with regulated entertainment, which takes place between the hours of 11 p.m. and 9 a.m., or which takes place on a frequent basis at any time, should be controlled to such a level that the noise will be inaudible at all times inside noise-sensitive properties in the vicinity of the licensed premises. Similarly, the venue's own license states in Annex 2.1, music must be kept to a low level so that it is not audible within the nearest noise-sensitive premises. My understanding is that the role of this license and this committee is to protect the amenity of my property, and that we should not have to experience noise from the venue's regular and frequent nightclub-style events at night, when I'm trying to sleep, during the day, when I'm awake, when I'm studying, or indeed at any other time at all. I'd like to take a moment to thank David Stewart and the Hackney licensing team for getting us to this stage. They've been very supportive. I'd now like to ask the committee to consider our licensing proposals, which Tom is going to outline, for the prevention of the persistent nuisance level noise we've experienced from the Lion and Lamb in the past few years, so all parties and everyone here can enjoy a peaceful coexistence in a future post-COVID-19.
Thank you very much.
That's part one. Part two, thank you. So,
Chairman, forgive me, I'm so sorry, through you, if I may. I don't know if a Regulation 8 notice has been served from Mr. Hunter. I was only aware of a review application from Ms. Havelock. If there's no representation within the 28-day consultation period or a Regulation 8 notice, Mr. Hunter doesn't have the right to speak.
Okay, Amanda, can you advise?
Sorry?
One second, Mr. Hunter.
Sure.
Just taking some advice. Amanda, can you advise on that point, please?
Yes, sorry. I'm not aware of a Regulation 8 notice being served on Mr. Hunter. I think that I don't know whether or not he originally registered to speak. Suba, are you able to confirm? Did he originally register to speak, Mr. Hunter?
I can send emails that I had with Scenario right from the beginning of this process, confirming that it would definitely be Kat and myself speaking tonight, and indeed that I might probably be one of the primary speakers. Sarah, I'm sorry if there was a form that we were supposed to fill in. We've just liaised with Hackney in good faith on every single aspect of this. I've had phone conversations about procedure. I've spoke to Jessica 3 times today on making sure we turn up at the right time and we don't miss it. Councillor Smith, if you'd like me to forward all of that, I will have to do it shortly, but it's open to you there, really.
I just need to take some legal advice from my lawyer. Hold on. Amanda.
Yes, I think we need to just check with licensing whether or not he did register to speak, because I think that I appreciate that he's probably gone to lengths to try and make his position clear, but clearly something's been missed. So I don't know. Suba, could you confirm?
Yes, because he sent an email to Sonaria saying that he'll be attending this hearing and he'll be speaking on behalf of Catherine as well. So he did mention to it. So
all right. Did you or Sonaria notify Mr. King that he would be speaking, or would you not normally?
I need to check because it was dealt by Sonaria. I'm not quite sure on the status of that.
Okay. Sarah, all I can say is in this instance, I think that we should allow Mr. Hunter to speak if there is a record that he did register at an early stage and he has been making attempts to. So unless you have a major objection.
No, Chairman, I won't, but from a technical point of view, there's either a representation that comes in within the 28-day period from Mr. Hunter, or he submits a Regulation 8 notice. But if you think it would assist you, I'm not going to say anything else.
Okay, I think Mr. King wanted to just come in quickly.
No, nothing. I just said we weren't notified. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hunter, did you submit a representation, or was it just Mrs. Hunter who did that?
Sorry, can you explain to me your representation?
The written document confirming that you are within the 28 days that you are intending to raise a representation on this matter.
I might not be able to clarify that exactly within your terminology. What I can certainly say is that Catherine submitted the original application for license review, which was sent through to us. At this point, I was in direct touch with Sonaria from the day that we were first in touch. And indeed, it was myself that sent all the supplementary materials through in conversation with her. There's a long and boring chain of me asking her whether your servers will accept WeTransfer files, along with my saying, yes, I will be there to speak. No point in any of the stuff mentioned. Again, Sarah, I can only apologise if
I'm sorry, obviously, that it wasn't probably clear from the outset when you did contact that you needed to make a representation at the start. But because it's a requirement that all persons who speak need to make that representation within the 28-day consultation period.
I think it might be better to say, Amanda, I certainly thought I had made it clear and asked what I needed to do,
Super.
Yeah, is that enough? I mean, Sarah's already said she's fine to pass it.
But Catherine has looked into it. Catherine has already mentioned that she will bring in Mr. Hunter as part of a witness kind of thing. So just to let you know.
I think it's because he needs to actually make the written representation himself. That's the issue. It's not that she wants him to join in. It's more that it's a legal requirement that within the consultation period, he should have submitted a written representation. I appreciate that that Sarah's not objecting, but she's saying procedurally it's not correct. So we have to just either accept. Chair, I leave it to your discretion if you're happy to hear from Mr. Hunter, or whether or not you just want to stick with the rule, which is that it should only be Mrs. Hunter who's actually making the representation and not him. I don't want to make a fuss at such a late hour.
I think it's fine for Mr. Hunter to speak, frankly. So, Mr. Hunter, off you go. 2 minutes.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Sorry, I've lost my place. I'm going to start again. I have a brief timeline. We've experienced license breach issues regarding noise from the Lion and Lamb since it first reopened under new management. At first, we were able to make some progress with the venue without mediation. For instance, after we complained, the venue stopped breaching Annex 3.14 of its license, which says use of external areas shall not be carried on after 11 p.m. This is very much in the early days of them reopening, and they had people outside way past that 11 p.m. And perhaps they listened to us. perhaps they realised that actually that's a really easy licensing breach to check if an inspector drives by after midnight. But after that, we were still experiencing other issues, particularly persistent nightclub-style noise, and we were unable to reach any further resolution. At that point, we started looking at alternative options. We spoke to councillors like Mr. Cam Adams, who was very helpful. We've had lots of conversation with the Hackney Noise Pollution team, which would seem to be not quite the right vehicle, which is why we're here. We saw independent advice from Eamon LeMay's team. I need to point out that is not legal advice. We asked them for help. They were very helpful. And we also liaised directly with the charity Noise Direct, which you might well be familiar with. Finally, in mid-2019, having begun a recommended noise diary log, which I believe is something that people are often told we should keep, I reached out to Mr. David Tuitt, hello, and that's basically following his advice that's led us to here tonight. We have three main suggestions how to proceed forwards to try and get a resolution. One, knowing that the venue is claiming that there is additional soundproofing, let's get on and actually complete that. If the terrace is completed, but when it is completed, or let's look at it as soon as possible with a view to installing noise limiters if needed. And let's follow that up with spot checks as soon as businesses can return to more normal operations again post-COVID. If the noise is fixed, let's prove it to everyone's satisfaction, basically. Two, we'd love to see a new limit on the maximum capacity of the external garden area to reduce patron noise. We would suggest a limit based on seated rather than standing capacity, perhaps, and also a review of the designated external smoking area, which is directly below our bedroom window after 11 p.m. Less people sitting down is basically always going to be quieter than lots of people standing up in this kind of venue, and we've just heard that with Violet Cakes. So let's look at some permanent licensing changes more in line with other venues in the area. The Prince Arthur, which has a lot of different capacity rules about its outside spaces, or something like the Bricklayers Arms, which has a no alcohol outside after 9 p.m. rule. All of these things would be hugely beneficial to noise reduction. And three, we'd like to see a change to the licensed hours of operation for live and recorded music. And here we'd like to look both at early mornings to tackle the problem of 9 a.m. Start post-party events, which the venue hosts on many weekends, Sunday at 9 a.m. And also that upper limit, of course, when the venue can currently operate through into the early hours of the morning. Why is it so important? That let me quote our neighbour, Simon, who we mentioned from Flat 40 Fairchild House, who said to me, it's not just that you can hear their music, it's that once you've heard it, you can't stop hearing it, which pretty much nails it as far as I'm concerned. As Kat has already said, a level of noise which will be inaudible at all times inside noise-sensitive properties in the vicinity of the licensed premises. That is us, and that is also the neighbours who added their name to our petition, which we submitted. And that is me. I hope that was 5 minutes. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. Okay, that's great. So now I want to hear from the Mr. Tuitt. Mr. Tuitt?
Sorry, Chair, I was just hoping you'd go to my colleague Ola first because I just lost where I was in my electronic agenda. But essentially, I made a representation. It's just I'm just trying to find where it is in the agenda. So it's within the agenda pack at E. I think it's Appendix E. E2. So Appendix E2. Essentially, the applicant provided a very detailed submission, filling out the nature of the premises to change from that of a public house to a nightclub, obviously, and this in itself isn't an issue for licensing, but the evidence is that or alleges that this leads to an undermining of the public nuisance objective. I do mention that we have received complaints in the past. The licensing service, have recent liaison with the licensee led to a revised dispersal policy being supplied to licensing officers back in May last year. I'm aware that colleagues in environmental protection have received complaints, and I'm sure that reference will be made to those. But also, there is that concern about condition 10, and I think that is something that needs to be assessed, and so I feel that the application is warranted and that an assessment should be made by the licensing subcommittee. I'll leave it there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. And Olalekan?
Yep. Hello.
Would you like to come in?
Yeah, sure. In the last 1 year, we've received 7 complaints, and that came from 3 different complainants. For some reasons, I didn't get any complaint from the hunters. I don't know how they reported their complaints. I don't know. The 7 complaints were more of loud music and the noise from outside of the premises. Once we visited and they went into the complainant's property to assess for net noise level, the officer that visited on the night deemed the level to be reasonable. So no action was taken from our team. So after that, I made a contact with the licensee to notify him, and we had a chat on the phone, and he said he was going to put some measures in place. So he contacted me in August this year that he was going to do some work relating to the soundproofing of the premises. So we agreed to meet at the premises on the 8th of September, which I did. And when I visited, I looked at the thickness of the sound insulating materials and the areas that they're going to cover. And so he told me that to come back in another 2 days, after 2 days, that the work will be completed by then. So on the 10th of September, I went back in the evening, and what had been completed. So I looked around the premises, inside and outside the premises. I looked at the rooftop. They put an acoustic material there, so it's all good. So what I did was we tested the music. So I told him to play the music at the highest level. We could hear the music outside faintly, very, very low. And I said, what we're going to do is that we went back in and we set the level further down to 85 decibels. So what I did was I asked him to set it on the sound limiter to ensure that, they keep to that level. So which they did. Then with that level, then I went outside again. It was complete silence. You heard nothing. So ever since then, we haven't received any complaints.
Can I ask you a question? Does the limiter knock out the bass?
Sorry, yeah, everything. We looked at the treble and the bass, yes.
Yeah.
However, I must let you know that we did not assess for live music. What I've done is that we've agreed to meet up on the 25th of October because they're going to have a live event between 6 and 10 p.m. So I will be doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great. So I'd like to invite the licensee now to make a statement. I think that's is it Sarah Clover or Andre King?
Chair, it's going to be me on behalf of Mr. King. You may wish to hear from Mr. King in due course. He's not hiding behind me in any way. He's very happy to answer questions, of course. But he has asked me to come here today to make the representation on his behalf. Okay. And I hope you have just picked up from what the Environmental Health Officer has said that really we shouldn't be here. This review application is somewhat misconceived. I say that in all due respect. But to make a review application as these applicants, Ms. Havelock technically did while the premises are closed is not an appropriate thing to do. And the evidence that has been submitted to you in the form of logs are disputed and unsubstantiated. They really are just written down in a table, but more importantly, they're historical. And as the Environmental Health Officer, Mr. Alash Bakan, has just mentioned, he was not aware of any complaints that came in from Mr. and Mrs. Hunter at the time that they actually purported to complete their log. So we have a mismatch here. I'm going to start by referring you and through your legal advisor to paragraph 9.42 of the Secretary of State Section 182 guidance, which indicates that licensing decision makers need to operate on the basis of evidence, and evidence that something needs doing now, that there's a problem now. And what we find ourselves in here is a situation where even if there was a problem historically, and as you will probably have seen from the written submissions that have come in on behalf of Mr. King, that is hotly disputed. But even if that were the case, that there was a problem historically, there definitely isn't one now. And it is only now at this point in time that licensing decision makers such as yourselves in the committee could make a determination to impose a licensing step of some description. So the application, again, I say gently, is misconceived. Now, agenda item 8, you have got the written submission of Mr. King. I won't take up any time in going through that, but he has put down with my assistance in quite some detail the rebuttal to this review application, and you will see in there that in actual fact, regrettably, there has been something of a history between Mr. King and the Hunters, particularly Mr. Hunter, that there is something that lies behind this review application that is less than friendly. Mr. King has been subjected to some vexatious behaviour by this couple, unfortunately, and obviously you can't go behind that to any great extent. You must deal with the review as it appears before you, but that is the context, and that may assist in explaining why, in fact, the Hunters have not raised their complaints with the Environmental Health Officer, but have chosen to take the action that they've taken. But you've got from Mr. King a detailed review response, and you've also got 2 appendices. Now, the first appendix deals in some detail with the suggestion that I think emanated from Mr. Tewitt, the licensing officer, that perhaps these premises might have converted to a nightclub, which was a suggestion that was initiated by the Hunters based upon some feedback from a website called Resident Advisor. And I think Mr. King's dealt comprehensively with that, saying, well, that's a feature of the website. The premises are not a nightclub. Secondly, Appendix 2, he's gone into great detail to break down the spec of the soundproofing that has been installed. Now, you'll notice what Mr. Leshbakan has said to you is that he was aware historically of 3 complaints, none of which came from the Hunters, that were investigated and found not to be substantiated. That's before the sound insulation. That's before the extensive works of sound insulation that are currently coming to their completion were actually done. So what we have now is a picture that is better than it was at the time that Mr. Leshbakan went out, or his colleagues went out, to investigate complaints, and found that the complaints actually were not founded on any outbreak that was actionable. So that is the situation that the committee would struggle, in my respectful submission to you, to impose any steps based on something that may have been historical, but now has been resolved to the satisfaction of your Environmental Health Officer. And again, with respect to Mr. Tewitt, the licensing officer, Mr. Leshbakan has been out and has investigated and has measured the sound insulation and has measured the sound output, and Mr. Tewitt has not. And I don't quite know how Mr. Tewitt has satisfied himself of any steps that might need to be taken, but I hope that he would be reassured by the feedback from his professional colleague in environmental health, whose specific remit it is to check for sound breakout and nuisance, that in fact there isn't a problem here that needs to be addressed at this point in time by the committee. And again, I point you to paragraph 9.12 of the Secretary of State's guidance that indicates that essentially each responsible authority to their own. And in terms of expertise, the committee will want to be guided by the responsible authority with the particular expertise for the particular issue in question. And this review application is based exclusively upon the licensing objective of public nuisance. So that's a very compelling point for the committee. It's backed up by the case law of Thwaites, which your legal advisor will be familiar with, that the committee should take first and foremost the advice that they are given by their professional advisors as to what licensing steps may be necessary. Add to that, there are no other representations for responsible authorities. The police also received this review application and have not put in any representation. They are content. I have to add to this that it was Mr. Leshbakan's recommendation that there be an 85 dB limit. Well, of course, that is now a requirement of the government under the COVID secure regulations. So on top of everything else that these premises have installed in their own premises, they are now under the greater and ever greater strictures that the government are imposing through their COVID COVID-19 regulations. And in actual fact, in common with most premises of this description and nature, they're on their knees. So of all times to bring a review of this sort, this is not it, because these premises are struggling to survive as it is, are finding it almost impossible to trade, are restricted by the government to a 10 o'clock curfew in any event. So all talk of curtailing hours and curtailing licensable activities it is disproportionate in the extreme. The hunters have mentioned Amy LeMay. I'm on Amy LeMay's committee. I work with Amy LeMay. I'm on the board of the Nighttime Industries Association. I'm on the board of the Music Venues Trust. I'm on the board of the Institute of Licensing. And the consistent message coming out from all of these organisations, and Amy LeMay in person, is, for goodness sake, give these businesses a break. They are struggling. The nature of Mr. King's premises, actually, as a grassroots music venue, amongst other things, is becoming an endangered species. These premises are liable to be lost to us for good at this juncture. This is no time to be imposing speculative steps upon a premises license which are simply not supported by the evidence. There are a number of features of this review application that are actually unlawful, where the applicants ask for planning steps to be taken, for example, and refer to the agent of change. It's a completely different regime, where they talk about a recording studio in the review application and ask the committee to take steps about that. It's got nothing to do with a premises license. There's no need for a premises license for a recording studio. They ask today for limitations on capacity. The Section 182 guidance expressly precludes a licensing committee from interfering with capacity, and I can dig out the paragraphs if the committee require it. That is the job of the fire authority. There is no need for a licensing committee to impose additional capacity limits, and certainly not when the premises are not trading. So as you can hopefully see, that there are some deep concerns about this review and the timing and the way in which it's been brought. Add to that the fact that there are two representations that have been made by local people who live closer to the premises than the hunters do. Mr. Anthony Okonya, a resident of Fairchild House for 4 years, Mr. Edda, I think it's Miss Edda Ugusoglu actually, from Academy Buildings, who's lived there for 3 years, and they've taken the trouble to write in, and people don't often do that. People will write in to complain regularly, but people taking the time out to write in to support premises is much more uncommon, and these people have done so. No particular connection to the premises, but they have put in their representations to say they have lived there at a closer location than the hunters do, and they do not have a problem with the premises and never have in all the space of time that they've been there, not just in the more recent time when the additional sound insulation has been done. So there it is. Any other objections that have come in, I believe, relate to a supposed roof terrace. There is no roof terrace. The works that have been done to the roof are part and parcel of the installation of the noise insulation. They will make things better and not worse. This is not a well-founded review application. It could not support licensing steps at this juncture in time because there is nothing to complain about now, and it is only now that the committee can take any steps. Thank you very much indeed. I don't know if you have any questions either of me or certainly Mr. King, as I've said, Chair, would be very happy to address you if that helps you.
Yeah, we'll come to those in the discussion phase. Mr. King, would you like to speak? You're welcome to speak if you wish.
Yeah. I'll keep it brief because, to say the least, this is all rather upsetting for me, given the fact that I take great care about my residents and I care very much about the idea of anyone being disturbed. When I originally made the venue, I've spent huge amounts of money, time and effort to soundproof it to a very, very high standard. Spent in the region of £100,000 to make sure that we don't disturb anyone. Now, in the past, when the original complaints by the hunters were raised, I asked for access repeatedly for a long period of time to see if these complaints were justified, and eventually I was able to go over to the flat, and we carried out a very detailed sound test upon which we wholeheartedly assessed that there was no problem being caused. There was no noise disturbance at all. Furthermore, we went to flats in Fairchild House, and we also deemed the same thing, that there was no noise being caused. So I'm very sorry to say, but I do feel that this is vexatious, given our relationship with Mr. Hunter in the past, where he did offer. He said he worked in hospitality. He'd be happy to assist us, or if we were able to employ him. And from that, things seem to have developed into a rather unpleasant scenario, where I do feel I've been targeted by them, and this has now gone on to a point where I'm feeling quite emotional, now, especially with this being raised during COVID, with the fact we're struggling to survive as it is. I feel I've done everything I can to protect the residents, and I believe in my heart that I am not causing a disturbance. Furthermore, we had a leaking roof, and we took the opportunity to add additional soundproofing, which I met with Ola Lekan recently, and he came and we assessed that there was no possibility of any noise disturbance to any residents. And a letter from Okanya, the gentleman that Sarah just talked about. He lives there with his young children, a grandmother, and the whole family, and they're closer than the Hunters are to us, and they've never been disturbed. So I'm sorry, but really in my heart, I really do believe this is a vexatious situation. I'm sorry to say, and I've gone way above and beyond to make sure that we don't disturb anyone, and I would hate to think that we did. So I think what's key is what Ola Lekan mentioned, because I don't want to sort of go on for too long, that when there'd been any complaints raised in the past, their officers went there and assessed that there was no nuisance. So I really have sort of reached a point now where I do feel this is bordering on harassment. I think I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. King, for that. Okay, Councillor Patrick, do you need any points clarified before we move into the kind of general discussion phase? Councillor Patrick?
Sorry, could I just add one last point I forgot to mention?
Yep.
And this is to you, David Chewett, is that your grounds for representation were based on this evidence that Resident Advisor as a website had listed us as a nightclub, and now we've gone to investigate, and everything in this website is listed as a nightclub. The Barbican Centre is listed as a nightclub under this website. A hotel is listed as a nightclub under this website. A bowling alley is listed as a nightclub under this website. So I just think it's very unfair for that to be taken as evidence against us, because we have no control over this website, and we are clearly a public house, a music venue with that operates under our licensable activities, and we have a varied range of them, from comedy nights to jazz nights to singers, songwriters, to DJs, and so on. Anyway, that's my last point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. King. Councillor Patrick, any points of clarification?
Yes, perhaps Amanda could help, in the sense that I'm not sure whether Miss Clover was saying that because the premises had been shut, that we shouldn't be hearing this tonight. And also on the point, she talks about historic information, but everything's got to be historic. You can't. I mean, I can't remember how historic this goes back, or it's the latest date of the information that we've heard. And also, could I ask about the complaints? You said you had 3 complaints of one not from these residents, but one was you went into one person's property and you heard no noise. Can you inform me what happened at the other complaints? Were people? Did the officer go into someone's property, or was it judged from outside?
Well,
And you heard no music, or what was the levels?
Well,
yeah, go on.
Yeah, we received 7 complaints.
7, sorry.
7, but from 3 different
Yeah.
but 6 occasions we weren't unable to visit because probably was busy on the night. But the time that we visited, the officer went into one of the complainant's property, and the assessment was done in the living room and the bedroom. The level of music they witnessed there was reasonable. It didn't amount to statutory nuisance. Even though condition 10 of the premises license says, sorry, I can't.
No noises should be heard in the nearest noise sensitive premises.
Yes.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yes. That is not practicable, and we don't base our assessment on that anyway. That is more of a licensing issue. But based on the notes of the officer on the night, the level of music they observed or they listened to was reasonable.
When you say it's reasonable, could they hear? I don't know what time of night it was. Could you tell me what time of night it was?
It was we visited on the 1st of December, and that's about 1:15 in the morning. 01:15 in the morning.
Okay. So did the officer say that the average person could sleep through the noise then?
Absolutely. That's the assessment is based on average person. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further points, Councillor Patrick? We can move into the discussion phase now.
Yeah. I just wanted Amanda to clear up Miss Clover's point about that this was the wrong time to hear it. I mean, and I understand that most businesses are struggling, but
I'm going to have to look at the requirements again. But as far as I'm aware, I think it's because the reason this application would have come in now is because of the timing of when it was submitted and the consultation process, etc. So I don't think it's it's just unfortunate at the moment the premises is closed, but I don't think that if we wait for much longer, it's going to make much of a difference. We still have to assess it on the evidence that we have before us as to whether or not there was statutory nuisance there and whether or not there is a need to assess the condition.
Okay, thank you, Amanda.
Chairman, may I clarify, because I think there's been some misunderstanding of what I was saying.
Yeah, go on.
This has got nothing to do with the time at which this has come before you. What I'm saying is that some of the complaints that have simply been written, I'm sorry, there's quite a lot of disturbance going on, there's quite a lot of interference.
Councillor Patrick, could you turn your mic off? Thank you. We can hear all your papers rustling.
I can't hear myself. Yes, what I'm trying to say is that because the log of complaints, which I reject anyway because it's got no substantive detail in it, but some of those complaints are going back to early and mid 2019, and my point is that the time to make a complaint about noise in 2019 is 2019. To leave it a year, because the application was made in summer of 2020, to leave it a year and then come to the committee at a time when the premises are closed and the scenario has changed because building works have been done and sound insulation work has been done, and to say to the committee, please take a step against these premises based on what happened to me a year ago, that is wrong. Because this committee needs to look at, well, what is the situation now? And you will probably know when matters go to the magistrates court on appeal, they do the same thing, regardless of what it was like at the time that the committee looked at it. Because of hope and glory, they will go, well, it's a year further down the line now, and we have to look at what it's like now. So there's always this rolling matrix of situations, and that is why bringing before you a tale of complaints or noise that happened a year ago is of no assistance to you whatsoever, and I rely on paragraph 9.42 of the guidance for that.
Okay, that's pretty clear. Thank you for that. I would like just to speak about some of the points that were raised by Mr. Hunter in relation to the garden sitting area and also the smoking area. It seems to me that some of the outdoor noise, where people are standing around or smoking in outdoor spaces, that seems to be, you know, quite a large part of the problem. I think the soundproofing issue, I feel fairly satisfied that that's been covered. But I would like to talk about the outdoor space. Now, I don't know if that's you, Sarah, or Andre.
Can I just say a couple of words and then invite Mr. King to come in, because obviously it's his premises and he'll know best. But you'll see from the written response that was put in to the review on behalf of Mr. King, this is a noisy area. That there's a lot of noise going on here. These are not the only premises by any means. It's a thoroughfare. People move around. People socialize in their own properties, and it's a feature that's come through a couple of the representations, the supporters' representations, that it's a generally vibrant and noisy area. And what we haven't heard is any indication from the hunters as to how they know or say that they know that any people noise that they're hearing is definitively connected to the lion and lamb as opposed to anywhere else. So that's the first thing. And then if I can defer to Mr. King to tell you a little bit more about how he controls his outdoor areas and the level of security staffing he has and so forth, and how confident he is that his premises are not giving rise to people noise.
Yeah, that would be useful. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So on any night, we've got this. I don't know if you can see this here, but it's a written. It's just a little laminated piece of writing that we give to every patron. I'll just read it to you quickly. It says, "Dear Lion Lamb patron, we hope you've had a wonderful evening. Unfortunately, we're closing in 10 minutes, and we would really appreciate it if we could have your attention here for just a minute. As you know, we are situated in a highly residential area, and therefore it is very important that we respect our residents at all time. We ask you kindly to please move away from the venue immediately when leaving and keep the noise to an absolute minimum as you do so. Also, if you're going home by cab, this will be the best time to order and wait inside till it arrives. Your help in this matter is very appreciated, and of course we look forward to seeing you again soon." So the first thing we do is make everyone aware of what we'd like them to do. And once, obviously, because they have had the chance to read this, as soon as our security and our team working, our managers and so on, are able to remind people, people have already been informed. So it's quite important we give this to people so they read it 10 minutes before they leave. Now, we employ a very, very good security company who at all times keeps people quiet outside. We're quite famous with patrons that you have to keep the noise to a minimum outside at all times. And we don't encourage people to congregate once they have left. So we move people away down Fanshawe Street to Hoxton Street. And we encourage people to take their taxis inside, wait for their taxis inside. So then we walk them straight out into their cabs. So we take huge measures to make sure we don't have any noise outside. We've also built a pergola on top in the smoking area, and we've got sound absorbent material there as well. So we feel that we're doing everything we can to make sure that no noise is being created outside. Obviously, you can only go so far to not allow people to talk at all. And you know, people have got, if they want to socialize and have a drink, they do talk. But we are very, very, very insistent upon that.
Is the garden area and the smoking area, is that the same?
Yes.
That's the same area.
Yes.
Yeah. Because there was mention of sort of limiting the numbers in there, but is that practical?
We do. So past 10 o'clock, we limit then the numbers to just 10 people.
Okay, so there's already a limit there.
Yes, we do that, yes.
And my final question to you really is about the music at 9 a.m. in the morning.
So
What-
our license does start at 9 a.m. Now, we have had maybe in a year 2 or 3 events starting at 9 a.m. and we don't allow people to go out and smoke. We again limit the numbers from till 11 a.m. So when we have done it, so we limit the numbers maybe to 10 people outside, and then we obviously keep the music at a low volume till about 11 a.m. But it's very rare that we do that, the 9 a.m. thing. But our license is, we are allowed to start at 9 a.m., but we very rarely use that.
Yeah.
It's maybe 2 or 3 times in a year that we have done that. It's not an every week thing whatsoever.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Patrick? Microphone. Microphone.
I know, I'm trying to find it. Sorry. I'm dyslexic and dyspraxic and I find it difficult to click on it at times. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I hear all that Mr. King said and his barrister, but we've had, there's Miss Havelock's support has put some photos in of people dispersing from your public house late at night, people hanging around, but you say people are not allowed to hang around.
Can you see those photographs, Mr. King? Do you have them?
They're in the pack. I'm frightened to get the pack up for being told to rustle again. But they're on page.
Well, if I may again, I think those pictures were taken just when we'd opened, right at the beginning of the business, and since then we've got very strict measures in place. I think the first 2 or 3 months there was some teething issues, but we've very much resolved those, and you'd never see a situation like that again.
Mr. King, can you put a date on that? When you say you just opened?
Well, I think we're talking about early 2017.
Well, one of these pictures is here, so it doesn't have a page, but it's dated a queue forms in the street prior to the venue opening for an early morning event, 9 a.m. Saturday the 12th of, oh, sorry, it does have a page, 127, Saturday the 12th of October 2019. Multiple people in the crowd already drinking. Venue will operate from this time to 2 a.m.
Now,
so there's a crowd of people outside queuing.
Yeah, but that never would have been at 9 a.m. And occasionally we have had events where we have required to have a queue because we've reached capacity with the venue, but that's in the evening.
Yeah, to be fair, I think those shots, Councillor Patrick, are taken at night.
Well, it says 9 a.m. on it. I don't mind you quoting from what?
That is just not true.
If I can interject, there are quite a few photos that we've submitted, and they're all date time. There's ones from the morning, there are ones from the evening. It is all in the pack in the PDF that we sent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's difficult to tell with the lighting. The ones from the night and ones for the day do look alike. Sorry.
Again, we rarely have morning events. I mean, we've had just a handful in the whole time we've been open.
Can I just read something out from the pack that we've got? The Hunters, we're asking for a review of terrace capacity. Terrace, whatever that is. Is that the garden or?
Yeah, that's the beer garden. Yeah, the smoking area.
Outside drinkers to a lower maximum seated capacity in order to avoid excess customer noise generated by multiple loud groups. There are approximately 30 people outside in this case, which refers to the photograph they've got. But they're saying in these cases we might see up to 100 people located on the terrace. Is that possible?
No, I mean, no. I mean, you wouldn't get 100 people on the terrace for sure.
So what's the maximum number of people you might have on there, would you say, roughly?
I'd say roughly maximum you're looking at maybe 30 to maximum 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Thank you for that. Anybody else want to come in on the discussion at all? Because we're sort of in the middle of a discussion here, so anyone can chip in.
Sorry, we were waiting for our turn to speak.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Because we have quite a few questions that have been asked of us, but we were letting you. letting you go through. Would that be okay?
Yep.
Fantastic. Just with regard to that last point, I think we showed a photo of the beer garden full at that point. You can do the head count. We're talking about outside as well. If people are on the street queuing whilst it's full, so a situation where the venue has, it is sold out, but there are people waiting to get in. There might be a queue outside as well as a full beer garden. That's what that larger number refers to. I think we wouldn't. I'm not trying to suggest that you would be 100 people on that bench in the foreground.
Yeah, we just sort of lost you there, Mr. Hunter, briefly. Could you just repeat that?
Of course. Sorry. The number, the larger number, was referring to how many people we might see if there was a full beer garden, people outside exiting and not being dispersed, and also a queue to get inside for a sold-out event or an event where the queue is taking a long time to process because it's ticketed and there's already a lot of people outside. So classic summer, you're full, you're there to, the beer garden's there because it's hot inside or whatever, don't care. Other people are still trying to get in. Security is doing the tickets one at a time. Other people are leaving. That's where your larger number comes from.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Fantastic. Would I be able to keep going?
Yep.
Thank you. I've got a lot here. Obviously, let's just start with the Sarah doesn't like our spreadsheet, and I'm very sorry about that. We took the model from a questionnaire that is listed on Hackney's own website, advising you to keep questionnaire, noise log. It's been quite a late day now. So a noise log is one of the main recommendations that you should keep. We've had issues, as we said, over many years. We've been trying to figure out the best solution forward after effectively being told there wasn't a noise problem by the venue. And we can go into that in more detail. But what we've been trying to do is figure out how we might address that, in a non-harassing way, to be absolutely honest. We haven't had a direct conversation with Andre in a while, precisely because we wanted to be able to bring this kind of motion. This is where we ended up, but whatever this was going to be in our heads when we started, this is why we were trying to figure it out. So we kept that log, and having had all of the advice from various different people, I've spoken to other Ken's colleagues many times in the past. I'm sure we can go into that, but we phoned David. We phoned David because his name is on the license, and we said, this seems to be a licensing issue. There's this word inaudible. We can hear them. We can hear them a lot of nights. I think it's great you're not a nightclub, Andre. That's fine. We're talking about nightclub style events here. If you're a music venue that does yoga, that's great. I've got no complaint about your yoga, mate, whatsoever. Crack on, enjoy it, relax. But on those nights when there are club nights, and we've submitted a lot of examples from 2019 in our pack, which are DJ-led club style nights. Yes, advertise on Resident Advisor as nightclubs. Let's say nightclub style events from now on, shall we? And we logged a lot of those, and the photos relating to those. If you go through that log in minute detail, I'm sorry, but you'll see ones that actually relate to the images from 2019. That's why we put it in a spreadsheet. I know the government doesn't like Excel much right now, but we love it. So that format. And I also wanted to address Sarah's point of the idea that the venue is closed. It's not closed. It's been open for quite a while under limited trading conditions, COVID, which, and we really hope actually, every venue pulls through. We work in the arts and cultural sector. We would love to have a broader, sort of cultural sector in this area. We simply just don't want to hear it in our bedrooms at 2 a.m. with that thud of bass. That is really why we're here. Similarly, we also know the area we live in. Kat has lived here since 2005, and there's been a pub there when she moved in. She knew what she was doing. I've lived in this area for a lot longer before I moved in locally. That's why we're here. We like the vibrancy, but not in our own bedrooms. This is not like the Violet Cakes issue where we're making a complaint on the sly about other people drinking in the area. We know there are going to be loud cars going by. We know there will be drunk people outside. The issue with all of that is those come and go. They do not schedule their events Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday morning, but definitely Sunday evening. which are often nightclub events, and those are the ones, again, Andre, we are talking about here right now. So going through my notes, reasonable noise, condition 10. I'm sorry we didn't bring our lawyer. I'm very sorry we didn't bring our lawyer. But we have worked in good faith basically to try and put together what we saw as the log that we were being asked for. We have put together photographic evidence, all those kind of things. We've liaised directly with David since 2019. It's on his recommendation that we do this, to have this airing basically of the issue. And as to why now rather than earlier, part of that is actually down to the fact that this is quite an aggressive process in some ways. You're all very friendly, thank you, but it's quite serious. We have to send an announcement that we're doing this to Andre. We have to put it in the post. We can't just file stuff with David and ask him to slyly investigate. He advised us, in fact, that would take a long time, and this was our best sort of route to resolution, if that makes sense. And I also think that since we did that, I believe that Andre's installed, he's saying he's installed extra soundproofing. We can't tell yet because they're not operating at that normal nightclub level that would say nightclub style event. Apologise. Certainly we've seen them repair the roof. I don't know whether it's finished yet. It looks like it needs some more work, to be honest, but that's only my opinion. If it's soundproof materials in there, that's great. I just saw loft installation going in. I've seen some kind of thin wood and that kind of stuff. If you think it's brilliant, that's brilliant. Come to my flat and we'll keep doing the test. That's exactly what I said in my 5 minutes. Is like, we've had a lot of people come out on the street and park up opposite and say, we didn't hear anything. We've had noise pollution team out over multiple years. I have a date here that your colleague Raz visited on Saturday, the 13th of May, 2017. That's even earlier than 2019, Sarah. And he came to our bedroom and he could hear music. But he did advise us as well that environmental health operates on a different decibelage to licensing, because it is looking at a very high level of decibel leakage. Okay, it will keep you awake. It might not deafen you indefinitely. It's not Andre with a jackhammer at 2 in the morning on his rooftop. It's bass music leaking from the venue. Maybe he's fixed some of that. I don't know. I'm sure I've got other things there. Oh yes, we liaised with Ashraful Hack was the name of the person we liaised with on the noise pollution team. And actually, let's just go to the flat in Fairchild who wrote you that lovely letter. Now, obviously, we've not got individual letters. We could have done. We just put together a petition. I spoke to that flat as well, and they said the same thing. They didn't have an issue. Lucky them. They're actually much nearer.
Chairman?
Yeah.
I did indicate earlier that I didn't have any objection to Mr. Hunter speaking, but this is a discussion session, and this is really turning into a monologue.
You're right. I do apologise. I thought we were waiting our turn on the discussion rather than just chipping in when we had objections. I wrote all mine down and I've just done them in order. I can concede at this point if that helps you, Sarah. Look, I'm going to mute. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patrick.
Yeah, could I ask Mr. Hunter why he says he called the noise patrol out in 2017, and the complaints are regularly through 2019 and early 2020. Why he didn't actually call the noise patrol service out and ask them to witness the noise? He's got a witness from a friend of theirs who comes to Catsit, I think.
I can answer that one without you finding our friend's letter, if that helps. It's very simple. We were basically informed that probably noise pollution wasn't the route to go through. Councillor Cam Adams put me in touch first with Ashraful. It took me a long time phoning before then to get through to noise pollution team. We actually did file many different complaints earlier in the time. I think I even did file a couple and never had a response within 2019. I think I have the email evidence, but I've not submitted it, so let's move on. But what we found was basically that we would phone, you get an answer phone. You would email a complainant through the form and you might get a call 2-3 weeks later. This is a long ongoing process. So we started looking for another alternative. Now, perhaps in hindsight, what I should have done is put everything in my log, my Excel spreadsheet, and filled in that form. That would have been a great idea, but I wasn't expecting to have a response, so I didn't. And I'll also say that some of the times I was writing those on my phone in bed, annoyed, and not at my laptop at 1:30 in the morning. So we were logging as we went. And bear in mind, basically what we did is we took a step back to try and figure it out. And I mean no offense to Andre when I say this, but in the end of 2017, we had no idea whether his business was going to close or not. He had advised us in our last conversation we had with him that he was looking to install more soundproofing, but that was in 2017. And so we waited to see what would happen, because he also talked about putting in a menu, and that's now just been implemented since they reopened post-COVID.
2 years later.
I mean, I think they had a limited thing, but it's a change. So we were waiting to see. And Andre, I see you want to chip in, so go for it, mate.
Sorry, Councillor Gilbert, is that right?
That's fine.
I didn't realise you were conducting these proceedings, Tom. But I know you find this all a laughing matter, Tom, but I certainly don't. I'd like to just make one very clear point here, just to clarify, I think, this issue once and for all, is that since we have reopened, and Tom Hunter expressed that they've had no disturbance whatsoever, that there was a period of time before the 85 decibel limit was brought in that we were operating at the same noise levels as before. And I think that just clearly demonstrates that the new roof and the new soundproofing, which we've spent a lot of money on, is very effective. Because Mr. Hunter hasn't even been aware that we've been operating at the same level as before. So I'd like to make that very clear, that we have operated at the same level as before since this new roof has been made, and it's clearly very effective.
Sorry, I spoke over you earlier, Chair. I apologise for that. If I have a chance to come back, please let us know.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to ask Olalakan, go back to the question that I spoke about before on the limiter, about the bass levels, because in your all the sort of the records of your noise complaints, you mentioned bass a lot. You can feel bass, hear bass, or whatever in the flat. Olalakan, can you just talk about the bass and the sort of, does the limiter do anything to the bass frequencies? Was my first question. You said no, but I just want to go back to it.
Well, depending on the type of music equipment owned by the licensee, the one for Lion and Lambs, they have where you can actually control the bass and the trebles. So that was turned down when we set the level. So yeah, based on what we set on that day, on the 3rd of September, there shouldn't be any bass escaping the premises because it's all soundproofed. I mean, I'm happy to provide my details to Thomas and Mr. Hunter. Anytime there's any noise impact, you can contact me directly because I'm the case officer for that area.
Okay, well that's good. I mean, I know about music and bass because I kind of work in the industry myself as a musician. But I know the bass frequency that they do travel far. They're big and they're beefy and they sort of travel long distance. I mean, Mr. Hunter, at what time are we talking here that it really bothers you, all this?
Yes, I'm on. I mean, I'd say for us, it's kind of, it's when you're trying to get to sleep at night, and once you've heard it, kind of as our neighbour sort of articulated, you can't not hear it. There've been nights when I've tried to put earplugs in, and because your brain's identified it, you can't not hear it after that, whatever you do, and you end up just pacing the flat because you just can't kind of get it out of your head almost. Okay. So I mean, I'm predominantly talking kind of when we're trying to sleep, kind of midnight onwards, effectively.
Right. Mr. King, you mentioned that you have had some events and stuff going on in there with music, equivalent levels to before. Now we've got the soundproofing in. Was the bass at the same sort of level? I mean, have you altered the bass basically? Because sometimes what you can do is just turn the bass down a bit after 1 o'clock or after midnight or whatever, on the system.
So just to further clarify, I believe so. The flat roof, which faces up to the hunters and to actually both blocks on either side. So this flat roof previously is the only area of the whole building that doesn't have concrete on it.
Mm.
Now, because of a water leak, I believe that some of the soundproofing had been damaged because of the water leak. I really do believe our soundproofing, even on that flat roof, was effective before. But because I had the opportunity to fix the water leak and some of the soundproofing was damaged there, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to build an extra roof. So on top, soundproofed to a very high standard, which I spent a lot of money on just recently.
Did you use acoustic foam? What did you use up there?
Well, we used everything on that. We started with rubber. We built a frame, and then we had acoustic rubber underneath. Then we filled it with mineral rock wool. I've put pictures of all of this and explained all the technical specs in Appendix 2.
That all sounds really good. Go back to my first question. These events that you've had since the soundproofing, you were playing, music at the same similar levels as before.
Exactly. So just let me finish. So, no, I was just saying that in Appendix 2, I've put all the pictures and specs of the soundproofing that we've done to the entire venue and this further soundproofing we've done. Anyway, that this soundproofing that has just been finished was to that flat roof, which I believed is the only area that didn't have concrete. So we went above and beyond and put in huge amount of soundproofing there with rock wool, acoustic plasterboard, acoustic felt. We did soundproof to a very high standard, and I believe that any issue that I refute anyway in the past is why the hunters didn't think that we were operating to the same level as before, but we have been. Before the 85 dB level the bass was exactly the same. We played to the same level as before, and clearly the hunters have not been disturbed or have not heard anything. So that soundproofing is effective from now
Mr.
on.
King, when was the last event you had there with music like that?
So it was just before the 85 dB rule brought in.
What date was it roughly?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the hunters, were you there 2 weeks ago in your flat?
We certainly were. We've also kept a log since Andre reopened. And this is all very reassuring in some senses. I mean, it does explain the issue completely in the sense that if it's not the concrete bit, we know that the block on the other side of the building from us does not have the same problems. We're unfortunately located at probably the absolute apex of where you do not want to be if there's noise leakage from a roof, which is facing up to our fourth floor flat.
I just would like to pin this down a bit.
Sure.
Mr. King, do you have a specific date that you could give us? And Mr. Hunter, with that date, can you tell me if you guys were in your flat on that date?
Sure.
It's very important.
So,
Mr. King, can you provide a date for us? I know it's a bit pedantic, but I think it's important.
So I'm just looking here at my calendar. The 85 dB rule was brought in. So now we're 8th of October. So I would say the 27th, the 26th of September.
What day was that?
Saturday.
Saturday, 26th of September. And we definitely operated as we did before. So did we on the 19th of September.
Okay, the hunters, were you there in your flat at that time?
Saturday the 26th, yes.
Yeah. You were?
Yes, absolutely.
And as far as you're concerned, there was no issues for you that night?
Delighted. They shot, obviously, earlier.
We actually didn't shot earlier.
No, sorry, I apologise.
We shot at 2 a.m., the same as we did before.
I apologise. I put you on the wrong line. I have you from opening about 2 p.m.
We shot at 2 a.m. on those nights, and we played the music at the same level as we did before.
No, I just said I only have you opening at about 2 p.m.
We don't have a record of any noise that night.
Yeah.
That have disturbed
us. That's clear. That's clear for me. Thank you for that. I think that's a very important point. Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be welcomed by anybody. I'm just thinking the premises has been shut for 6 months because the government rules. They're now shutting at 10 p.m. and from what we hear, it may even shut earlier than that, or they may shut down completely in the next couple of weeks. The government's threatening. The hunters haven't heard any noise in the last few, in the period before the 10 p.m. closure. I'm just wondering whether we're thinking about, it's just a suggestion, that we adjourn this, that we leave it on the table, and after the premises, after COVID and the premises reopen as normal, that the hunters keep a proper diary. They call out the noise service. The noise service comes and witnesses any noise, and then it comes back. It's just a suggestion because a lot of this information is quite old, and things have changed, and the premises isn't operating as normal. And we hear it from what the government say, it won't be operating as normal, certainly probably for the next 6 months. So,
okay, I'd like to take views on this really, because we're into consensual sort of decision making.
I'm just trying to see, because we could dismiss it, we could put restrictions on it, but considering that the premises, even if we put restrictions on it, they won't come in. They probably wouldn't come into effect till the premises reopened, and it seems.
I think Sarah.
I'm just trying to be fair to everybody.
I think Sarah would like to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, Chairman, I fundamentally object to it. With respect, that's not the way forward, and there are a number of reasons for that. Firstly, your powers to adjourn only exist under the hearings regulations in the public interest. One of the points I will be making in due course is that the only objectors, the only participants that you have in front of you are the hunters. And that doesn't meet the test for the licensing objective of prevention of public nuisance in accordance with Hope and Glory, Mr. Justice Burton. The test in Hope and Glory is that public nuisance under the Licensing Act 2003 has to be something which exceeds by a very long way indeed, and I'm quoting, anything that could be called reasonable and not just by a few people. It has to be a public nuisance. And at best, what you've got here is two people who clearly feel very strongly about a situation, so strongly that they are still continuing to maintain logs when they can't hear anything, and who have described their consternation such that once they've heard something, they can't unhear it. Now, people don't talk like that unless they're focusing on something. So we've got some sensitivity going on here that is not replicated by the public at large, because it is Mr. Olashibikan that represents the public at large so far as you are concerned, because he has investigated complaints of others, and although the officers have only been able to go into one set of premises, the noise that's reached those premises is the same noise that would be reaching other premises within a similar locality, within a similar proximity. So it's a proxy, and it's a useful proxy. So you are not dealing with the public interest when we're talking about adjourning off to another day. And the reality of what would happen is that there would be an appeal against that. And in terms of any steps that would be imposed, so you wouldn't be talking about testing that after the lockdown, you'd be talking about testing that after the appeal, because none of this would bite, none of this would make any difference whatsoever to the operation of the premises license until 21 days plus the totality of the period of any appeal. And you're talking about the middle of next year at best before this would come in front of magistrates. Now, that is the reality that I think we have to grapple with. Yeah. So it wouldn't be changing anytime soon. Any decision to do interim steps or anything of that sort would not alter this license anytime soon. You would be talking at the earliest as to when magistrates could list it, and that would be the middle of next year. So there is absolutely no point adjourning whatsoever, and I do resist it.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to, Councillor Patrick, I think it's something that we should just crack on with and see if we can get it resolved tonight.
Yeah, I was just trying to be helpful. I'm sorry
No,
that
well, thank you
Mr.
for that.
Clover took such an attitude to saying that obviously I only suggested it and hoped that everybody would agree, but obviously Miss Clover said she won't agree, so I wouldn't force through an adjournment. I was just hoping that it would be a way forward, since we're talking about premises that aren't operating to the level that they were. But let's crack on then.
Part of our job here really is to sort of try and bring, the Hunters and Mr. King together, so we can sort of work something out that keeps everyone happy. I mean, you've heard the Hunters' concerns directly, Mr. King. I mean, is there anything that you're willing to do that might sort of, apart from the soundproofing, which I think is fantastic, it sounds great to me. That's top job. Anything else,
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that from the situation where it's got to is, unfortunately, there's not much more I can do, because I've really gone above and beyond to make sure that they're not disturbing, other than sort of holding them by the hand and doing. I can't really do much more. I mean, I'm happy to accommodate wherever I possibly can as a licensee and as someone who is responsible for the premises and someone who has a duty of care to my residents.
Gemma, if I may, and I apologise if this is coming across as attitude. It isn't attitude. These are legal proceedings, as you will appreciate, and we're working within legal parameters. It's quasi-judicial proceedings with legal consequences, and I have to identify that where I see it. And one of the that's why Mr. King has paid me to be here, to identify these legal issues where they crop up. I have to do that. That's my job. And one of the problems that we have is precisely as you've identified, we are not here to keep the Hunters happy, to try and find the middle ground, to try and mediate. That's precisely what we're not here to do, because these are legal proceedings. What we're actually here to do is to identify what is in the public interest, because this is a licensing objective of supporting public nuisance or preventing public nuisance, so that it isn't an inter partes set of proceedings where the Hunters are suing Mr. King and you have to decide between the two of them. You have a public duty to the public at large, and that's what the Licensing Act gives you. And that's why I have to point these things out, because that isn't what the Hunters are doing here. They are bringing personal proceedings.
Yeah. I think Ola was trying to talk.
Yeah, go on, Mr. King.
No, I think Ola was trying to talk. He's had his hand raised.
Oh, did he? Sorry, Ola. I didn't see you there. Sorry.
Sorry, can I ask a general question here?
Of course.
That's for Mr. Hunter.
Hi.
Yeah, hello.
We have our hand up too, but you go first.
That's okay. Well, can I just clarify? Are you going by the condition 10 that you mustn't hear the music inside your property, or the level of music you hear is intrusive?
Sorry, condition 10, please?
No. Are you being disturbed by the music? Is the level intrusive or unreasonable? Or you're going by the condition 10 that says any music?
Yes, we have been disturbed by the music and all the dates that we submitted in the log. And I'd just like to say very quickly to Sarah's point, that's not our quote about the once you hear it, you can't hear it. That's from in the neighbouring block as one of the people who joined our petition. Now, perhaps I should have had a large number of people here tonight. I'm sorry, I didn't realise that might have been a requirement. So just to say, obviously that's two people. It's not a public, perhaps, by the legal termination of it, but just to clarify that. Yes, when we, on all those instances, that's music that disturbs. I remember telling David when I first went to see him in July 2019, I think it was, that we were able to hear Andre's venue's music over the movie Captain Marvel, which is quite loud. So and that's during the evening. That's not at night time, like 1:30 in the morning when you're trying to get to sleep. It does tend to. There was an instance. I'm just going to write this down. So I think it was Tuesday, the 4th of August at 12:30 this year. While your roof was going on, Andre, you had a sound check. We could definitely hear that. I could actually hear it in the rooms on the other side of the flat, away from your venue. Hopefully you fixed that. I mean, seriously, I realised that, Councillor, your idea of a sort of mediation or a postponement has kind of been shot down, but actually that was something we would have proposed. And if I had had more than 5 minutes, it's actually a line I cut from my reading today, where I would have said, let's move it forward to post-COVID. let's do. I did say, you know, here an independent music inspection. So let's do it again. Let's get Olakan out. Let's get him into Simon's apartment. Let's get him into Daniel's apartment. Let's get him into Stephanie's apartment. All people I've spoken to, and worth noting, I've spoken to some of them in previous years, not just, you know, to pursue this. In terms of mediation, Andre, I'm going to speak to you directly for a second. We are both sorry if you felt harassed. It's actually been the same for us, feeling that you have ignored our complaints initially. That visit when you came down to our flat, you're right, we didn't hear any music, but we did alert you the same weekend, you and Ricardo and the team, that we were hearing it again. Now that might be a decibel level, that might be the bass level, you know, I don't know, because we didn't have our people in your venue, you were only in our flat. And we did complain many other times through 2017 until we realized that we probably weren't going to get a response. Perhaps we felt we were harassing you. We certainly felt you were ignoring us. And very finally, I'm sorry, Councillor, but one final point to Andre's point that on harassment, I'm also very sorry if you thought I ever applied for a job with you. In the documentation you sent, you made it sound very much as though I have actually applied for a job, submitted a CV.
Chairman, this is ruled out.
No, I know. Yeah.
And to be honest, I haven't. All I've done, Councillor, is when we were trying to be friendly, right when the venue.
Yeah, just finish up now, Mr. Hunter, please.
Yeah, I was just saying, Andre, all I was trying to do.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. There's a bit of humming coming in, buzzing sound. I think it's gone now. Okay, right. I mean, I think that we've kind of discussed this a lot sufficiently. Would everyone agree? Councillor Patrick, do you agree? We've had a good discussion.
Amanda wants to come in, and since she's our legal,
yeah,
I think
I apologise for not being able to see people on my screen. So I'm on an iPad. So yeah, please help me if you want to come in.
Sorry, Amanda wants to come in, and David wants to come in.
Okay,
Yeah.
Amanda.
Basically, I was going to say that I have to agree that I don't think an adjournment is appropriate, because we have to, the review has to be based on the evidence that's before you today. And you can't, you know, it sounds like you're trying to gather more evidence rather than assess it on what you've been asked to consider today. So unfortunately, I don't think that that's going to serve a useful purpose to the committee because of the length of time. And I think that that could drag matters on. I don't think it's proportionate. Maybe if it was for a shorter period, maybe that may have been considered reasonable, but I don't think it's probably reasonable. So we do have to base it on the evidence that's before us today, even if it is historic evidence, and to assess each case is assessed on its own merits as to whether or not there is a public nuisance here. So my view is that we do have to proceed with a decision based on what's been presented today.
Yep, agreed. Mr. Chewett, you wanted to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just more some observations. I think condition 10, I think I made reference to this in my representation. So condition 10 does talk about music being kept at a low level, so it's not audible within the nearest noise sensitive premises. And I know there is case law in relation to that, but it does appear that from what Ola's told us this evening, that there has been at least one occasion where music has been audible in the Hunter's premises. So that could be something that's explored. And also I think there is the issue around condition 15, which talks about live and recorded music not going beyond 11 p.m. Sunday to Thursday, which is I think might be slightly no, sorry, apologies for that. No, that isn't the issue I was to refer to. The
that is
issue
not a
is
condition. Is that a condition or not?
Well, it's stated as a condition, but the provision authorises live and recorded music from between Sunday and Thursday.
It's a very important point, this.
Yeah, the condition Sunday to Thursday. Sorry, I was reading that Thursday to Sunday, so it's my mistake. Sorry, Chair. And just the last thing, this license, I'm fairly sure predates smoke-free legislation, smoking ban, etc. So condition 14, which talks about external beer garden's not been used beyond 11. I would say, if this license was granted today, we would say save for X number of smokers. So I think that might be something, if in your deliberations, that's something you look at.
Okay, thank you.
Just quickly, can I?
Yeah, just 1 second, because basically we've sort of finished the discussion. I was just going to say, what we do now is we go into sort of closing remarks for everybody.
Okay.
So if we can just sort of have some closing remarks from everyone. Go ahead, Mr. King.
Oh no, just to what David Chewett just mentioned, which is that I think he might have confused what Ola Lecan said. Obviously, Ola can speak for himself, but he said that clearly that there was no noise being heard within the properties, and I think David Chewett mentioned that there was noise.
I thought Ola had said the noise wasn't to a statutory limit. I'm sure Ola can explain.
No, he said that when they visited properties, they did not hear noise that was to a.
I think we can hear from Ola.
Let me go by.
Go ahead, Ola.
Stated that the level of noise witnessed inside the property was reasonable. So there was noise. They heard something. But we will continue to have problems as long as that condition is in place, because it's not practicable. There's a particular case law, but I can't give you the top of my head now, where the
Developing retail. I'll tell you it in a minute.
okay, it's not practicable, so there will always be problems, in relation to that condition. Because our assessment is based on average person, which is a stat nuisance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so should we go into closing remarks then from everyone? I mean, David, you've kind of given yours to an extent. Do you want to say anything else?
No, I can leave it there for now, Chair. I think that's enough.
Okay. Sarah, would you like to?
Yeah, if I may, please. One of the things you asked, Chair, was what else can Mr. King do? He's done a lot. There's been £100,000 gone in on this soundproofing. He cares very much, as you can probably see and tell, and he's been working very closely with Mr. Eleshbikan as well for some period of time, and will continue to work with environmental health. And environmental health now have been out on more than one occasion and are going to carry on going back out. And they have declared themselves, so far as I have understood, to be content with this situation. Your environmental health officer, as the responsible authority, is not inviting you to take any steps right now. Now that goes beyond just a common sense point. That becomes a legal point because of the case of Thwaites, which I mentioned earlier, and your legal advisor will be aware of. And a number of the things that I've been here to say tonight are legal points, which sound aggressive because there isn't really a way of talking about law that doesn't sound a bit in your face, but it is what it is, and there are consequences for getting it wrong, unfortunately. And when noise complaints have been made to the environmental health team, we don't know specifically. I don't know that we've been told whether they were music-based or people-based, whether they were the noise of people milling around and moving around outside. But it's very helpful that even without the acoustic attenuation, and there's been some acoustic attenuation in the outdoor areas as well, don't forget that part. There has been some sound acoustic material gone in for pergola and so forth outside. Even without that, the officer found that the noise emanating was reasonable. Now, I do have to deal with condition 10 because both your professional officers have referred you to case law, and this is important because the case law they're talking about is Developing Retail and South East Hampshire Council, and it's a 2011 case, and the judge trashed an inaudibility condition and said, no can do. You have to have a condition that is based upon something measurable. You have to have a condition that is based upon decibel output. And I can see your environmental health officer nodding there. And what that means is, ideally, Mr. Chewett said earlier, if this license were to be granted again, it would, and this is one of the things, it would never have that condition put on it again, because essentially it's been trashed by a High Court judge. And so what that means is if anybody came up to try and enforce an inaudibility condition and it ended up, not in review necessarily, but on a prosecution, it would get kicked out by the court because it's an out-of-date condition. So that takes care of that. So we're not talking about breach of condition because the condition is an anomaly. The condition is a dead horse. So we are talking about where Mr. Eleshbikan is at, which is nuisance, which is what is proportionate, what is reasonable. And that is not only in terms of output, volume, decibels, bass, whatever you want to call it, that is also in terms of who can hear it. Because one way or the other, the hunters are here alone, and they've got quite emotional about this. Now, Mr. King has got his suggestion as to why that is, and I invite you to bear that in the back of your mind, at least when you come to make this determination, that there is an allegation that this is an agenda. And although logs have been kept, if you look at those logs, there's very little in them in terms of specifics and details and places and times and who and why and what. Anybody can fill in a log. That's not really something that the committee can base an evidence-based decision upon at this point in time. And that's really what your legal advisor was saying to you a moment ago. It's the justification as to why there should be no adjournment, because you have to make a decision based on the evidence that you've got before you now, and particularly what it is that your professional officers are asking you to do. And that is really where we are at. And it is absolutely crucial that the environmental health officer has declared himself at this point in time sufficiently content to allow the licence to continue, subject to his further checks and balances in the future. If there's a problem at that stage, he will bring a review, because it's not a one-stop shop. It's not one opportunity only. And that's why it's not appropriate to take a preemptive strike at this stage based on historical information that goes back more than a year, in circumstances that are now very, very different. And essentially the hunters are saying, well, it's untested. The quote that they said to you a little while ago was, well, we can't tell yet whether the soundproofing has worked. Well, yes, they can, because they've had the opportunity to witness and listen to output, human and music, since that insulation has gone in, and even according to them, they are not disturbed by it. And that really is the point at which we are now. And that's the only time you can make a decision, is now. So that's the circumstances so far as Mr. King is concerned. The position is protected by the ability for any of your licensing officers, whether it's environmental health, whether it's Mr. Jewett, whether it's police or anybody else, to come back to you in the future if they need to and say there's a problem now and here is the evidence, and then you could do something about it, but not tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. King, would you like to come back, have a final say?
Yeah, I think it's there's not much more I can say after what Sarah said. I mean, I think what's clear, and just not to beat around the bush, is that, you know, the level of what you would describe in the past, when he visited a property, the level was not one as such that was deemed a disturbance. Now, I believe that maybe the hunters might have heard something, but it was not at a level which I believe was a disturbance, because I've myself been there and witnessed it and haven't heard and could not determine anything of to such a level that was a disturbance. But now with the further soundproofing, it's to such a level where they can't even hear it at all. They might have maybe heard the slightest thing, but not a level which was a disturbance. That's what I believe. But now they just cannot hear anything, which proves how good our soundproofing is now, which I believe is probably one of the best soundproofing in any music venue in London. And we've gone way above and beyond, to the point where now they just can't hear anything at all. So yeah, thank you very much, and appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to bring in Councillor. I'll bring you in at the end, Mr. Hunter.
Okay, fine.
I just want to hear. I want to hear from Olala Khan. Just closing remarks from you, please.
I haven't got anything to add again.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Hunter.
Thank you. So clearly there is a large issue over this word inaudible and its different interpretations, and that's one of the things that we have, obviously come here tonight to talk about. We have definitely been able to hear music historically on all of those patterns. Sarah, to your point, I'm sorry again if you don't think my spreadsheet's comprehensive enough. If I say 23:53 on a date and we can hear bass, I'm not sure what information else you want from us when we're complaining about late night bass, and we're giving the dates. I've submitted, I think, a spreadsheet. It's got like 80, 85 different lines in it. It shows multiple. It's basically every weekend. That's quite a lot of information. Now, hopefully, Andre is correct. I say hopefully. We don't know because Olakan has never been to our flat to test it. But no, genuinely, fingers crossed, you've cracked it. I really hope so. Not just for me, but for all the other people who have signed that letter that we put in there. It's in the pack. They're not making it up. I haven't coerced them. And to that point on the agenda, Sarah, you're saying I haven't presented any evidence, times, those kind of things. I'm not seeing any evidence on this agenda. I deny it completely. I even wrote to Scenario saying, can we offer off the rest of this conversation for that to be retracted? I've never applied for a job with Andre at the Lion and Lamb. I've never applied for a job with him in any other capacity he might operate. I've not offered paid consultancy services that I'm able to offer. There is no agenda here because until I read that, I had no idea that I had applied for something with him. Olakan, I would love for you to send me your contact details as you offered. Certainly, it might not be an official procedure to sort of be able to forward this on, but certainly we can say tonight that Andre is very aware that there has been an issue. I mean, he wouldn't be here otherwise employing great counsel. And if there is a future issue, I would assume that that would stand in favour of those people making the applicant, whether it's us or anyone else. I think that's all my points. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I think we've heard closing remarks from everybody.
Can I just say the last thing? Just the last thing.
Yeah.
I just would like to refute that point that I didn't deem there was a disturbance. I went to the flat, and I'm just sticking by my point. I did not deem there was a disturbance. Otherwise, I would have done something about it. I clearly did not deem when I went to Mr. Hunter's flat, to their flat, and I did not deem there was any disturbance. And we played the music much louder than we ever do inside the venue, and my mind was rested at ease. That's why I did not really get back to Mr. Hunter. That's why I did feel harassed, and that's why I'm here, because he has forced me to be here. I do not want to be here. Okay, this is nothing that I'm enjoying. It's hard enough to run the business as it is at this time. This has taken up a huge amount of time. It's been very upsetting for me and been very, very difficult to manage this and the huge amount of time it's taken to keeping my business afloat, which we're barely doing by the skin of our teeth at the moment.
So, Andre, I wish you all luck in surviving, but I have to say, it didn't take us a little bit of time to put it together either. And you're absolutely right. When you did come to our flat, there was no volume that we heard. We agreed on that. The problem was there was again afterwards, and that's really where all this stems from. Clearly, we're not going to find a resolution on that tonight. But with everyone else listening, if you excuse me one moment, that is where this problem comes from. We have been able to hear this music. We've come to this kind of thing, and I hope you'll hear me tonight in that was true. There is no need. We are not trying to harass you in any way. All of those logs are accurate. You can very distinctly hear that music. Other people have signed off on that as well. The letter's in the pack with all of those names. It sounds like you might have sorted it. Olakan will probably be coming to our flat if there are any problems, and we will be keeping everyone informed of that, and we will try and make it much more transparent. So it's not phone calls or door knocking or texts late at night. We will go through this procedure properly. Sarah, I will have all your evidence for you. David, I probably won't need to pester you quite so much. All of that. But I hope you hear us tonight that this was a problem, and that one visit did not crack it.
Okay, Catherine, I just wanted to kind of apologise that I kept calling Mr. Hunter all the time, but it's just that we got into that kind of flow.
No, that's absolutely fine.
I wasn't deliberately kind of keeping you out of it. So anyway, I didn't want to offend you in any way.
No, that's fine, and that is much appreciated. Tom, as you can probably tell from everything that he said tonight, Tom has kept a closer eye on the technical detail for all of this. and has been the one sort of actually keeping the log on behalf of both of us. But I do very much appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, great. Okay, let's so now we're going to sort of final clarifications if there is any. I don't think there is personally, because I think we've heard loads of stuff, which means that we're at the end, unless you want to chip in very quickly. Anybody? Opportunity?
Just saying no, thank you, but thank you.
Thank you very much for everyone's time.
Everyone, including you, Andre, including you, Sarah. Thank you all for your time.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, that's brilliant.
Thank you.
Councillor Patrick, you happy? Councillor Patrick, microphone.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I think I've heard everything I need to hear to make a decision.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so that means, folks, you can leave the meeting, and then we shall stay behind to make our deliberations. So thank you, everyone, for attending this, and I hope that you know that this will have a resolution to this problem, you know, and that you can be happy neighbours again.
Thank you.
We'll aim for that. Thank you, Councillor, and actually thank you to all of Hackney. We didn't realise you worked so late. We will never doubt you again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all the best, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.